Chapter 1534. The Magi. Oh, Di Jiang put his hands behind his back and looked up at the starry sky. His eyes were sparkling. At that moment, the two Emperor's stars were abnormally dazzling in the starry sky, emitting a brilliant light. Although the Emperor's star that represented the demon race was countless times more powerful, the Emperor's star that represented the humans was like a newborn calf. It also had strong strength and fighting spirit. Just two stars seemed to have illuminated the entire starry sky. At that moment, the light intersected and dazzled. Di Jiang's expression did not change, but there was an exceptionally solemn look in his eyes. Once upon a time, the human Emperor's star was so small, but now it was countless times stronger and was no longer the same as before. Lin Feng, Di Jiang said softly. The deep voice was not in the language of the Magi, but in the language of the human race. For the first time, he began to pay attention to this human emperor that he had never really cared about. Perhaps the Magi don't only have one opponent. Di Jiang looked at the starry sky, and a glint flashed across his eyes. At that moment, in the starry sky, the huge star that formed a tripod with the two Emperor's stars was still as motionless as a mountain, and its light did not fade. However, the distance between it and the two Emperor's stars was unknowingly decreasing. It was like a boat going against the current. If it did not advance, it would retreat. Fight! The supreme expert of the macaque race that was rarely seen in hundreds of millions of years. He had never had any desire for power. He had no interest in defeating the Magi and ruling the Douling world. The only thing he loved was to fight, and that was to fight nonstop. He was born for battle, lived for battle, and gave up everything for battle. The new commander of the demon race, the great sage. Ever since he was born, ever since he could remember, he had been fighting. Fighting, improving, fighting, and improving. It could be said that his strength was tempered step by step through endless battles. He stood out from a weak clan and ascended to the sky step by step. His growth process was very similar to Lin Feng's and Xian Fei's. This was an emperor. To become an emperor, one had to overcome obstacles and experience calamities. Boom! The world trembled. The heavenly treasure, Earth Pillar, seemed to be struggling violently, but it was powerless to break free. The Earth Pillar flickered with light. A third of it had already been forcibly fused by the great sage, and its color was changing visibly. The power of heaven and earth flowed out and fused with the golden starlight, creating a terrifying power. An attack of pure power crisscrossed and tore through space. The Tao of space had been completely sublimated. Amazing! Lin Feng exclaimed inwardly. This attack alone showed the results of the great sage's hard work over the past few days. He had completely improved his Tao of space, which was his weakest skill. His use of heavenly treasures had also changed greatly. If he fought Di Jiang again now, even if he still couldn't gain the upper hand in the Tao of space, at least he would no longer be a hindrance. Even though he didn't want to admit it, the current him was indeed no match for him. Other than speed, he was weaker than Di Jiang in every aspect, just like how he was weaker than Di Jiang that day. To deal with him, he had to join forces with his main body to have a chance of victory. If he were to rely solely on his clone's strength, he wouldn't have the slightest advantage. He didn't even have the slightest chance of victory. But come, Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and the doomsday spear in his hand clanged. He really wanted to give a try. He wanted to personally test the true strength of one of the strongest demon race commanders in the Douling world. Just how strong was he? And how far was he from the top of the Douling world's pyramid? Hua! A surge of heroic spirit burst forth with power. The blood in his entire body seemed to be burning. It was triggered by the powerful power of heaven and earth. His body's strength flowed out continuously. The transformation of Lei Zhang's true form seemed to follow his will. Lin Feng's chest rose and fell slightly. The lightning in his hand condensed on the doomsday spear, and his strength increased. In an instant, extreme intensity burst forth. The intense Tao of force and dense killing intent were instilled. It seemed to be illuminated by the stars in the sky. It was a path of light. As the Doomsday Spear danced, the spear's concept intertwined with the lightning and completely merged with his body. Man and spear had never had such an intimate connection. The concept had never been so profound. Starry Sky Realm. Even though he didn't know how many levels and realms there were in the Starry Sky Realm, at least at this moment, he could feel that under the pressure of this strong opponent, in this battle where he was bound to lose, he improved. Because of the battle, he broke through. His spear's concept had risen to another level. If his original spear's concept was only at the Starry Sky Realm, then he had officially taken the first step. It was at the same level as Bei Longshou's spear concept, complemented by Lei Zhang's true form. The feeling and power of his spear moved instantly transformed like a soaring dragon. Cloud Rise. Facing the whirlpool-like spatial turbulence in front of him, Lin Feng's expression was calm. The thrust of the spear moved according to his will. One spear move was another spear move. It was as if the clouds were rising and the fog was parting. Even though it was simple, the concept was extremely profound. And this wasn't the beginning. It was just the beginning. Cloud Rise bloomed as if it was the beginning. It was just for the next spear move, Cloud Rise. Lin Feng's eyes shone with extreme brilliance. Boom! His power burst out from his body onto the Doomsday Spear, causing the Doomsday Spear to shine brightly. The spear move that was originally suppressed by the Great Sage's earth-shattering strike erupted with the eruption of the spear move. The extreme power pierced through the layers of barriers and completely pierced through the path of space. Golden light collided with golden light. Power competed against power. The power of heaven and earth intertwined with each other. This had already surpassed the power of the Douling world. Sizzle, sizzle, crack, rumble. The space was completely shattered. Cloud Rise's power was originally at the Starry Sky Realm. Complemented by the Starry Sky Realm's spear concept and the extreme speed and power of the Douling world, he wasn't at a disadvantage when facing the Great Sage's terrifying strike. He even turned the tables. Boom! Lin Feng's power erupted. Impossible. Di Zhang's expression changed slightly. With his astrological divination ability, he could naturally see the confrontation between the two Emperor's stars. Just as he knew before, there could only be one of the two Emperor's stars. They would repel and restrain each other. Only one of them could survive. Therefore, he didn't care about Lin Feng and the so-called human emperor at all. In his opinion, Lin Feng would definitely die. There was no way he could be compared to the demon race commander. But now, in the starry sky, the human emperor's star that was originally suppressed was now faintly overshadowing the demon race's emperor's star. What was going on? Could it be that Lin Feng's power had surpassed the demon race commanders? Even the faceless Di Jiang, who was in chaos, had a change of expression. The change of the situation was really beyond his expectations. This wasn't just a great shock to him. It also completely disrupted his plan. The change of the situation in the Douling world affected the entire situation, especially now that the southern region was like a chess piece that was swaying left and right. The southern region and Lin Feng were the most important to play this game of chess well. There was no room for any mistakes. Lin Feng, a glint flashed across Di Zhang's eyes. He clenched his fists with a strong, murderous intent. For the first time, he had a strong desire to kill Lin Feng. In his world, there was only the witch race. No matter who stood in front of the witch race, there was only one outcome: death. They were evenly matched. It was an intense collision. This was a battle that could be said to be historical. It was as exciting as the battle between the witch Emperor Di Jiang and the Great Sage. The two of them were evenly matched. Lin Feng's Doomsday Spear came and went like a ghost, and his spear technique's murderous intent surged. The Great Sage's giant cudgel roared with power, and every strike seemed to create a large hole in the ocean. It was crazy. If there were onlookers, they would definitely be shocked. Who would have thought that a human powerhouse could go head-to-head with the demon race's strongest powerhouse and not be at a disadvantage at all? But Lin Feng understood clearly. He was still not as powerful as the Great Sage. Even though he had improved greatly during the battle, the gap was still there. He's not using his full strength. It seems that some of his power is sealed. Lin Feng thought. The Doomsday Spear danced in his hand. Agility and power complemented each other perfectly. With the spear's speed and his body's advantage, he took the initiative to attack and forced the Great Sage into a passive position. Is it because of the injury? Lin Feng's eyes glittered. He didn't know that the Great Sage had used a lot of power to forcibly refine the Earth Pillar, especially the power of his soul, which was restrained. It was like the Great Sage was fighting two people at the same time. Not only did he have to fight Lin Feng, but he also had to fight the Earth Pillar. He had the advantage in speed. Lin Feng's attacks came wave after wave, spear after spear, never stopping. The Great Sage's face was glowing. His eyes were shining, and his hair stood on end. He was full of fighting spirit. He didn't shrink back because of Lin Feng's strength. Instead, his fighting spirit was aroused. Only such an opponent was exciting enough for him to fight. Even though he was at a disadvantage, it wasn't because of his strength. Although this human spear was strong, the concept of the spear and the overall strength of the spear were inferior to his. He was only relying on his amazing spear moves and speed to prevent him from fighting back. To him, this was just a warm-up. Roar! The Great Sage roared. His golden power was released. The Earth Pillar in his hand trembled. Against the impact of the soul power, the Earth Pillar seemed to be fused with another layer, and the light it emitted was half golden. This level of battle also benefited the Great Sage greatly. Using battle to temper oneself. Using battle to improve oneself. Clang! He could control the Earth Pillar as he wished. The Great Sage's attack was stronger and scarier than before. When he fought Lin Feng head-on, the Great Sage was full of fighting spirit. He became stronger when facing a strong opponent. But this time, he felt strange. It was completely different from the previous clashes. The spear in front of him was like a spring. It disappeared with a touch. What's going on? The Great Sage was stunned. His eyes were filled with confusion. When he looked again, there was nothing in front of him. There wasn't even half a human figure. Lin Feng had run away. Boom! The Great Sage's eyes turned red. He was so angry that smoke came out. Chapter 1535. Of the 36 stratagems, escape was the best plan. Lin Feng's expression was calm, but his eyes flashed. Although the Doomsday Spear was still full of fighting spirit, there was no point in continuing the battle. To him, this battle was fruitful enough. Not only did he clearly understand the strength of the demon commander, but he also understood the gap between himself and the top of the Douling world. It also allowed the strength of his clone to rise to a new level, a solid improvement. His clone had become stronger again. Every battle, challenging someone of a higher level, was an excellent touchstone. This was training, and he would improve because of the training. What a monster! The corners of Lin Feng's mouth curled up, and he smiled bitterly. The terrifying power made his right hand a little numb. Although his physique was not weaker than the Great Saint's, the power that a spear and a staff could unleash was different. Moreover, in terms of pure strength, the Great Saint was stronger than him, and his understanding of the Tao of strength was also better. His advantage was in speed. The spear's advantage was in flexibility, and its attack was focused. His strength is terrifying, his tenacity is extremely strong, and his physical defense is impenetrable. Such a monster has appeared in the demon clan, and his talent is so terrifying. No wonder Di Jiang couldn't kill him that day, even when he had the advantage. In time, if he completely refines the heavenly treasure, it will be harder to kill him. Lin Feng thought to himself, and he felt a chill. His opponent was much stronger than he had imagined. In a real face-to-face battle, after coming into contact with him, he knew how terrifying his opponent's strength was. In today's battle, he seemed to have the upper hand, but in fact, he had only caught the Great Saint off guard. As the battle progressed, his spear moves would gradually be understood, and he would soon be counterattacked, or even be at a disadvantage. At that time, it would not be so easy to escape. There was no need to determine a winner. He did not have a grudge against him, and it was just a coincidence. Given his identity, he would not lie. Since he said that he had never seen Mother, then it was most likely true. It's here. Lin Feng's eyes faintly brightened. While he was pondering in his heart, he could feel that the aura behind him, which was emitting thick battle intent and killing intent, was pointing directly at him, as if wanting to lock him in place. However, with such a great distance between them, it was easier said than done to lock him in place. After all, although Lin Feng's strength was inferior to his opponent's, the difference was not that great. The corners of Lin Feng's mouth curled up slightly as he maintained a constant speed. He had purposely allowed him to catch up. If he hadn't lured the tiger away from the mountain, how could his main body search that area? Given the strength of a great sage, it was only because of his desire to fight that he couldn't sense the presence of his true body. But now that the battle was over, how could his true body hide from him? From the beginning to the end, his goal had never been him, nor had it been the demon race. It had always been his mother. His mother had mysteriously disappeared in this area, on an isolated island. The barren island had an eerie and mysterious aura. Lin Feng floated in midair, his eyes shining brightly as he looked down and moved slowly. The entire island was covered by an inexplicable aura, which made one's heart tremble. The gray sky seemed to have lost its spirituality and vitality. The entire area was lifeless, and the density of spirit qi was relatively low. It's very strange. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and he was very vigilant. As the saying goes, one is marked by the company one keeps. Even the demon race commander is nearby. There is no reason for this area to be as simple as an isolated island. There must be something special about it. Could Mother be here? Lin Feng moved forward slowly. Right now, the demon race commander had been lured out of this area by his clone. He had enough time to slowly explore. The huge, isolated island occupied 1/10 of the area. Excluding the sea area, in his opinion, apart from the unknown area where the demon race commander was, the possibility of his mother being trapped here was the highest. But where was she? Even though he was moving forward rather cautiously, his speed wasn't that slow. At this moment, he should have already entered the central area of this lone island. However, his surroundings were still eerie and strange. A large expanse of stone walls that were like a desert, and numerous enormous rocks stood there. As the cold wind blew past, it gave off an additional feeling of desolation. Suddenly, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Looking into the distance, there seemed to be something different. His heartbeat suddenly quickened, and his speed increased rapidly. I found something. Lin Feng clenched his fists, and the shield of truth slowly appeared to protect his body. The flame of rebirth was ignited, and it was as though he was wearing a fiery red battle armor. Being in such an unfamiliar place where even his mother could be trapped, he had to be fully prepared. Only by being prepared would he be able to avoid any mishaps. A moment later, it's here. Lin Feng floated in midair, his eyes shining. At this moment, the surrounding scenery had already changed a lot. The sandy land still existed, but the towering group of huge rocks had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a terrifying cemetery. That's right, it was a cemetery. The eerie aura of death, and the tombstones stood tall. The fog was extremely thick, and it had the power to affect one's mind. It was as though there were endless malicious ghosts baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Illusion? Lin Feng frowned slightly. Suddenly, the malicious ghost in front of him seemed to have broken free from its shackles and crazily pounced on him. Bang! The shield of truth shone, and the malicious ghost's shrill voice rang out. It went straight into his eardrums, and with a bang, it exploded and disappeared without a trace. Lin Feng shivered, and his eyes shone with cold light. Sparkling flames were already burning. It was not an illusion. With his nature, illusions could not affect him at all. Most importantly, the shield of truth reacted. What a strange place. Lin Feng was deep in thought. The surroundings were dark. It was not that the sky had darkened, but the darkness of the fog had shrouded the entire area. Even though his vision was still as bright as day, The changes in the environment were real and unquestionable. The closer he got to the cemetery, the more he felt the eerie aura of death. The number of vengeful ghosts was increasing, and they were becoming more and more frequent. They were constantly rushing toward him, and their ugly faces and putrid stenches made the entire area look like hell. Bang! 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 In front of the shield of truth, these vengeful ghosts couldn't do any damage at all. Wah! Lin Feng stood outside the cemetery. At this moment, the giant tombstones were clearly visible, and the aura of death was extremely thick. The cemetery did not have a gate, but there was a faintly discernible electric net around it, isolating the entire cemetery like a cage. It was like a different space from the outside world. There was no doubt that there was something strange in the cemetery. Otherwise, how could it be so mysterious? Mother, will it be here? Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Without hesitation, he stepped forward and went straight in. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Chapter 1536. Whoosh, whoosh. Two flashing golden figures, one in front and one behind, streaked across the sky like two shooting stars. In the boundless sea, Lin Feng and the great sage engaged in a race of speed. The distance between them remained stable. Lin Feng couldn't shake off the great sage, but the great sage couldn't catch up to Lin Feng either. To Lin Feng, his battle with the great sage was already over. There was no point in continuing. But to the great sage, the battle had just begun. His blood was boiling, but his opponent was already running away. How could he not be angry? Just as he'd said before, humans were very cunning. Roar! The great sage's furious roar came from behind. Lin Feng's lips curled into a smile. Of course, Meng Qi could understand the language of the demon clan, and he could empathize with the demon clan commander's anger. When he met this demon commander for the first time, his impression of him was actually not bad. He felt that this demon commander was much simpler than the Magus Emperor. He was a pure martial artist who lived for battle and lived for battle. On the other hand, Shaman Emperor Jiang felt like a bottomless abyss, hiding far too many plots and schemes. Unfortunately, we still haven't reached the point where we need to fight, Lin Feng thought to himself. How could he not want to fight the great sage with real swords and spears? But right now, he wasn't strong enough. Wait for me. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. One day, I'll appear before you again. When that time comes, I won't run away again. Until the victor is decided between us. Island, graveyard. BZZT. BZZT. It was as if he'd passed through a layer of space. His body felt intense pressure, but the shield of truth's strong defense neutralized all external pressure. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. It was as if he'd entered a new layer of space. If it was said that everything outside the cemetery was hazy before, then everything was now clearly visible. It wasn't clear to the eyes, but to the senses. Clear tombstones stood in front of him. Huge graveyards stood tall, like the emperors of hell, cold and noble. Phew! Lin Feng exhaled softly and stood up. The darkness around him was gone, replaced by a gray world. There seemed to be no other color here. The sky was overcast, and the world was overcast. Everything was dim and colorless, and the aura of death was much stronger than any other place he had ever seen. BZZT. Death aura of death emanated from the net. Spiritual chi entered, forming a stable cycle. It felt like a giant was cultivating in the graveyard of death. No wonder the spirit chi outside the island is so dense, but the spirit chi on the entire island is so thin and lifeless. So, it's because of this graveyard. Lin Feng. At this moment, the question was easily answered. The closer he got to the graveyard, the thinner the spiritual chi. On the other hand, the stronger the aura of death. The entire graveyard emitted a strange, yet powerful energy. It felt like it was isolated from the world, but there was a natural connection between it and the outside world. However, magnetic field? Lin Feng suddenly thought of a word. The thought made him clench his fists and purse his lips. He pressed the communication compass in his left hand. There was no signal at all. It was completely out of order. He took out the positioning compass to determine the range. The needle was also swaying and spinning in circles. He had lost his sense of direction. Even the small light at the bottom dimmed. No color could be seen. As expected, the compass was developed based on the research of energy technology, Feng Luo said. Its energy source is closely related to the origin energy of the Douling world. The so-called magnetic field is actually the Douling world itself. Therefore, after entering this strange graveyard, the connection between the Douling world and the magnetic field will disappear. Or rather, it will be replaced by another magnetic field. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Although he didn't know much about energy technology, he still understood the basic principles. In other words, his current situation was very similar to what his mother was facing. Looking at the huge graveyard, there was no fear in his heart. Instead, there was a sense of excitement. Perhaps this was the place that he had been looking for but couldn't find. Mother might have met with misfortune here, but what kind of place was this? The great sage seemed to have mentioned earlier, this is a forbidden area of the demon race. Those who trespass will be killed without mercy. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. He analyzed carefully. If I'm not wrong, this should also be one of the forbidden areas of the demon race. Therefore, there isn't even a single expert of the demon race. But what kind of forbidden area is it? He was very curious. Lin Feng suppressed his emotions and took a deep breath. His figure flashed. The shield of truth would occasionally send out violent collisions. However, there were no substantial attacks from experts around him. This was more like a natural layer of protection for the graveyard. Moreover, the power was not weak. It was evident that the shield of truth was able to make such a strong commotion. It's the gray energy, Lin Feng said to himself. It was an extremely familiar gray energy. It was the opposite of life. It was the aura of death. The difference was that the gray energy here was very aggressive and independent. It did not need to enter the body for it to be effective. From the defensive strength of the shield of truth, it could be seen that the gray energy's attack was at the level of a Saint King. In other words, this place was at the level of a natural barrier like the Southern Sea of Flames. In the Douling world, there were all kinds of extremely powerful neutral energy. The Earth Core Fire was one. The gray energy and the aura of death here were the same. If it was an ordinary person, even a Saint King expert would find it difficult to break into this place. Lin Feng said to himself. The aura of death he came into contact with outside the graveyard had a very strong illusory attack. The aura of death here was even stronger. It was easy to imagine how powerful it was. Perhaps he could resist it for a while. However, to resist such a strong illusory attack for a long time was a great test for a warrior's will. With Mother's strength, if she enters here, Lin Feng thought to himself. He was not 100% sure. The aura of death might not be able to threaten his mother, but this illusory realm attack was different from ordinary attacks. After all, the power of the soul was limited. Repeated attacks, no matter how weak they were, would cause substantial damage to the soul. Even a drop of water could pierce through a rock. This was also why heavenly soul masters were so feared by others. However, with Mother's strength, the possibility of her being trapped was very high. However, the possibility of her dying was very small. At the very least, there was a strong blood relationship and telepathy between mother and son. If Mother was really in great danger, there was no reason why he could not sense it. Pa! Pressing his chest, Lin Feng sighed softly. His heartbeat was calm. Not only could he not sense Mother's aura, he could not sense anything else. However, this was not necessarily a bad thing. However, if Mother had really entered here, why did she do so? Lin Feng's eyes sparkled. He was very curious. In the human territory, there were cenotaphs erected for heroes. In the wizard realm, there was also an ancestral magi palace. There was a tomb for magi kings to worship the powerful magi. This was a form of respect and belief for the dead. It was the same for the demon race. The reason why this isolated island was called a forbidden area and why it was located beside Demon Emperor Island was because of its unique meaning. This was the tomb of the demon emperors, demon kings, demon stars, and demon kings at the peak of the demon race. In the first and second war of the Magi and demon race, the demon race had suffered countless casualties. There were several or even dozens of times more saint kings than the Magi, so the demon race's tomb was naturally very big. The most basic requirement for the demon race experts to be buried here was that their strength had reached the peak of the saint king level. They were all heroes of the demon race who died in the war of the Magi and demon race. I see. Lin Feng finally understood. At this moment, he was standing in front of a huge tombstone. Looking at the demon race words on the tombstone, his doubts were instantly resolved. The low-level demon race did not bother to use words, but when their strength reached the saint level and saint king level, the demon race's intelligence was no less than that of ordinary elite humans, so the use of words became more and more common. Lin Feng stood alone and looked ahead. On the tombstone, there was a huge bear-shaped demon race expert. His strength and physique were extraordinary, and he looked like a real dragon. Violent Bear Clan, Demon Emperor guards Xiong Ren's tomb. Lin Feng murmured softly. From the size of the tombstone and the tomb, it was actually not very big. On the tombstone, there were only a few words of Xiong Ren's achievements and past. He was a demon race hero who died in the first war of the Magi and demon race. Although he was a peak Saint King level expert, his position in the tomb seemed to be quite low. His tomb was only at the periphery of the tomb of a demon race expert. What is Mother doing here? Lin Feng was even more curious. It was not rare for the tomb of a demon race expert to have a strong aura of death, but Mother searched the entire Douling world to find the star origin stone to revive Father. Her goal was very simple and pure. Could it be that there was a star origin stone in the tomb? It was very strange. With his experience, he did not know that this was a forbidden area of the demon race, but Mother should have known. Moreover, if this was really a forbidden area of the demon race, it should be strictly guarded. With the demon race commander nearby, could Mother really enter this place without anyone knowing? There were many doubts. Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and his chest rose and fell slightly. The more he thought, the more confused he was. However, at the moment, it was useless to think too much. Since I'm here, let's just take things as they come. This tomb is completely different from other tombs. Just this gray energy alone is so strange. And where did such a strong aura of death come from? This place absorbs the surrounding spirit chi so intensely. The demon race obviously knew about it, but they did not stop it at all. There must be a reason for it. Perhaps Mother has also thought of this. Lin Feng nodded secretly. He looked around. He had been here for a long time, but other than the automatic attacks of the gray energy, there did not seem to be any other dangers. Yes, I'll enter through the center of the tomb and explore again. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. With his current strength, there was no place in the Douling world that he could not explore. Chapter 1537. With great skill comes great courage. Demon Emperor Island itself was a forbidden area. The great sage did not lie to Lin Feng. No matter who came here, they would be killed without mercy. Even the experts of the demon race might not be able to enter this place, even if they had the strength but no status. This was because this was the imperial city of the entire demon race. Those who were cultivating on Demon Emperor Island were all the successors of the various royal families. They were the elites of their respective races. This graveyard housed the super experts of the demon race. It was also a forbidden area. In fact, it was even more forbidden. Other than the 4 demon emperors, even the great sage, who was now the commander of the demon race, did not have the right to enter. However, with the great sage's strength, if he wanted to enter, no one could stop him. In fact, the great sage had entered before, because he was curious. What was in the graveyard? Other than tombstones, there was nothing. Obviously, normal people would not enter, not to mention the terrifying aura of death here. Even sage kings might not be able to resist it. It was normal to not find any guards because the aura of death was already the strongest defense. Not to mention, the graveyard was close to Demon Emperor Island. There were so many experts gathered outside. Who could enter? One had to admit that Lin Feng was very lucky to be able to enter this place. If not for his clone attracting the Great Sage's attention, the Great Sage would have sensed it when his main body entered the graveyard. However, he had been lured away. As for Lin Feng, he entered the depths of the graveyard bit by bit. Bam! Sizzle! The defensive power from the Shield of Truth became stronger and stronger. Every collision was like lightning. The terrifying energy of the aura of death became stronger as he went deeper into the graveyard. It was like a warning, but also like a hint. Lin Feng's eyes were bright. He was not afraid at all because his thoughts were very clear. Fine Mother. The weirder this graveyard was, the more certain he was of Mother's existence. Whether it was the interference of the magnetic field or the powerful aura of death, it made him even more certain that within this area, this graveyard was the most likely place. There must be a reason for this abnormality. Dragon Elephant Turtle Clan, son of the Demon King. Diamond Ant Clan, Elder Diamond. Heavenly Serpent Clan's first Demon Star, Qing Meng. The first Demon Emperor of the Draconic Bull Clan, Peng Long. Lin Feng took a deep breath and stood in front of an unusually luxurious and huge tombstone, his eyes sparkling. Sure enough, it was as he had expected. The arrangement of the entire cemetery seemed to be chaotic, but it was actually orderly and arranged in an extremely orderly manner. Going deeper and deeper from the periphery, the scale of the tomb grew larger and larger. The area it occupied also expanded, and the status of the buried experts increased accordingly. From the guard leaders, to the elders, to the various demon stars and demon emperors, the structure of this graveyard was exceptionally clear. The aura of death grew stronger. It felt as if they were absorbing the essence of heaven and earth. The stronger the deceased, the more death aura they could absorb. Phew! Lin Feng's heart trembled as he pondered. According to this pattern, the place he was standing at now should be the center of the graveyard, the deepest position. The Draconic Bull Clan was one of the top existences even among the 4 great imperial clans. According to Shun, the current Demon Emperor of the Draconic Bull Clan, Niu Yunlei, was the head of the 4 great demon emperors. Regardless of status or strength, he was superior to Kuei Tianyuan. The status of the first demon emperor of the Draconic Bull Clan, Peng Long, could be imagined. Nearby, the first demon emperors of the Brutal Bear Clan and the Blood Tiger Clan were also buried, but I still can't see the bottom. Lin Feng clenched his fists as he became more and more curious. He looked towards the depths of the graveyard, which was covered by a dense aura of death. Even with his eyesight, he couldn't see what was inside. He only knew that his heart was beating faster, and his intuition told him that the power contained within was abnormally terrifying. What exactly was there? What kind of expert would have a higher status than the first demon emperor of the 4 great imperial clans in the Demon Clan? The origin of the circulation of the aura of death and spiritual energy should be in the deepest part of the graveyard. Lin Feng thought to himself. At this time, he could clearly see the structure of the entire graveyard. Although he didn't know what was in the center of the graveyard, it was mysterious and strange. The strong spiritual energy from the outside world seemed to be absorbed by a black hole, and then the aura of death spread out from the center of the graveyard, forming a circulation. Therefore, the deeper in, the stronger the aura of death, and the more secrets there were. Apart from that, other experts and even other demon emperors were not allowed to enter. All demon emperors, regardless of their strength, had the same status. Obviously, the woman's moaning came from Foxy. Her foxy charm was pleasant to listen to and tugged at one's heartstrings. The Demon Fox clan was known for their feminine charms. With a curl of their fingers and a charming smile, they could steal one's soul, let alone the strongest of the Demon Fox clan, Foxy. But who could be the guest of Foxy? A human who had successfully blended in with the Demon Clan. Lamb Talk Tea. If other demon emperors or even demon kings saw this, their jaws would drop to the ground. Who would have thought that Foxy's guest would be a mere human? Moreover, the relationship between the two was quite bad. Foxy had publicly criticized Lamb, talked tea, countless times, and wanted to kick him out of the demon clan. No matter how strong the southern region is, it can't be stronger than the witch clan and the ancient clan. Lin Feng's potential is indeed unfathomable, but he has a biggest shortcoming. Lamb Tok T's eyes showed a hint of disdain and said in a low voice, "He lacks ambition. If others don't offend him, he won't offend them. Don't provoke the southern region. For now, just ignore him. Compared to the southern region, G is the real unstable factor." Lamb Tok T did hate Lin Feng, but as his strength increased, he now had greater ambition. What was Lin Feng? His pursuit was to rule the entire Douling world. Didn't you guys have a good cooperation? Foxy smiled. We're just using each other. Lamb Tok T looked at Foxy and smiled. Aren't you and I the same? Huh. Chapter 1538. Each and every one of them was like a stone statue. The stone sculptures were all over the mountain. They were lifelike, but there was no life in their eyes. No, these are not stone sculptures. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. He flashed and arrived in front of one of the stone sculptures. His huge body was full of pressure. Although there was no life in it, it was definitely not a stone sculpture. It was the purest flesh. To be precise, it should be a corpse. Exposed corpses? This was a little too bizarre. Something's wrong. Lin Feng frowned and looked into the distance. His body flashed again and arrived in front of another corpse. It was huge like a devil. Its red body seemed to be burning with flames. Even in the sky, full of corpses, it was extremely tall and mighty. Zhu Rong Shaman Clan. This was not a monster clan expert. I can't be wrong. Lin Feng looked serious as he stared at the Zhu Rong Shaman Clan's corpse. He was much more familiar with the Shaman Clan than the Monster Clan. He could not be wrong. Most importantly, even if the Zhu Rong Shaman Clan expert was dead, there was still the power of fire in his body. He was definitely a Zhu Rong Shaman Clan expert, and a saint-level expert. It was too strange. In fact, it was normal for there to be more corpses of Monster Clan experts here. This was the forbidden area of the Monster Clan. It was the place where the heroes of the Monster Clan were buried. It was respected by the entire Monster Clan. However, what was the reason for the corpse of a Shaman Clan expert to appear here? Whipping the corpse. Lin Feng shook his head with a bitter smile and looked around. There was more than one Shaman Clan expert's corpse. Zhu Rong Shaman Clan, Gonggang Shaman Clan, Gomeng Shaman Clan. There were at least dozens of corpses. Moreover, his vision was blocked. He could imagine how many Shaman Clan experts' corpses there were. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. He was thinking, but he could not figure it out. It did not make sense. Phew! Lin Feng let out a sigh of relief, feeling rather helpless. This puzzle had stumped him. Let it be. It has nothing to do with me anyway. Lin Feng shrugged and thought to himself. He then continued forward. The darkness grew deeper and deeper. The aura of death surged forth like a suffocating wave, causing the shield of truth to react even more intensely. Oh! Lin Feng's eyes flashed. The strange scene was far worse than what he had imagined. He couldn't see anything from the corpses of the outermost area, but the deeper he went, the denser the aura of death became. Clues began to surface bit by bit, and he seemed to be able to vaguely understand something. These corpses could actually absorb the aura of death. The outermost corpses were like stone statues, and no aura could be sensed from them. However, the further in they went, the more alive the corpses became. The dim eyes even showed some changes. It was a gray light, as if it was a power that did not belong to the human world. The influx of death aura seemed to give these corpses new life. Gray energy. Lin Feng shivered inwardly. This was not the first time he had seen the gray energy. He had seen it in the kingdom of Maru. This type of energy was quite special. It was far different from the energy system that existed in the Douling world, but its strength was not inferior in the slightest. In fact, it was even superior. Being in close contact with these corpses, he could even feel that they were about to come alive. But was it possible? Lin Feng was hesitant. Nothing in the world was 100% certain, but there was also nothing 100% impossible. Even if he had a lot of experience now, that was only in the Douling world. Compared to Duo, his vision was no different from a frog at the bottom of a well. How could he make a judgment? Maybe in the future, these corpses could really come back to life. Lin Feng smiled, but his smile suddenly froze. Wait, he seemed to have understood something. The corpses could come back to life? These corpses, every one of them has the strength of a saint. There are even many Saint King-level corpses here. Once they come back to life, Lin Feng's expression changed slightly, and his heartbeat quickened. If his hypothesis was true, what did it mean? Saint-level and Saint King-level experts would descend again. The monster race, the sorcerer race, and even a few neutral race experts that didn't belong to the monster race or the sorcerer race. What a terrifying power. I think I understand. Lin Feng took a deep breath, his eyes sparkling. The monster race seems to have grasped some kind of ability that can bring these dead experts back to life. So, not only are there corpses of the monster race experts here, there are also corpses of the sorcerer race experts. Too terrifying. Lin Feng was secretly shocked. The monster race's strength was originally above the sorcerer race. When the Third Great War of the sorcerer race began, the monster race had an absolute advantage and ruling power. If it wasn't for the sorcerer Emperor Jiang guarding the sorcerer race and the large number of astral treasures by the sorcerer race would have already been defeated. Even so, the sorcerer race could only maintain the balance. Even if they won a few battles, they didn't have the upper hand. Once the monster race had such a terrifying ability to bring the dead back to life, there was no need to continue the Great War of the sorcerer race. The result was already decided. The southern region and the sorcerer race are interdependent. Once the sorcerer race is destroyed, the monster race will definitely wipe out the humans like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. At that time, when the cunning rabbit is dead and the hound is cooked, the end of the southern region will come. The crisis was completely foreseeable. Imagining the future war situation, Lin Feng's forehead couldn't help but drip with cold sweat. It was too miserable. Seems like even the heavens don't want the monster race to unify the Douling world. Lin Feng thought to himself, his gaze clear. Fortunately, he accidentally discovered this secret. Otherwise, once the monster race's conspiracy was formed, there would be nothing he could do. And now, it seemed that the monster race had just discovered this ability. This could be seen from the degree to which the corpses outside absorbed the death aura. The situation had yet to be formed. The heavens don't want us humans to die. Lin Feng felt lucky. Everything was fated. Who would have thought that the monster race would make such a big fuss in their own graveyard? Even if the Sorcerer Emperor had calculated everything, he wouldn't have thought of this. Destroy all of them before they reached the climax. A cold light flashed in Lin Feng's eyes. He already had a plan in mind. Destroying these corpses might be a difficult task for other warriors, but for him, he had flames that were close to the starry sky level. Even a living Sage King would be burned to ashes, let alone these corpses that only had the death aura now. However, you have to remove the roots. Just burning these corpses is far from enough. As the battle continues, it won't be long before the monster race finds more corpses. If you want to destroy, you have to destroy the source. Lin Feng's eyes burned as he looked ahead. He was determined to be the bad guy. How did the monster race control and awaken these corpses to become their strength? He didn't know this ability, but he could destroy the source. As long as he stopped the death aura and cut off this cycle, everything would come to an end. Without the death aura, it was like cutting off the monster race's food. In front, Lin Feng moved quickly like a gust of wind. His eyes were cold and sharp. He didn't expect to discover such a big secret of the monster race before he found his mother. Closer and closer. Sizzle, sizzle. The flames exploded, and the reaction of the shield of truth became stronger and stronger. Hua, his body seemed to be bound by an unknown force. It was like the power of the heavens. Lin Feng frowned, and the feeling in his heart became more and more intense. There was an extremely terrifying force in front, but he had no way out. Whether it was for his mother or for humanity, he could only brace himself and move forward. The strength of the corpses around him was becoming more and more terrifying. From the beginner Sage King level to the middle Sage King level, then to the high Sage King level, and even to the peak Sage King level. The vitality was also becoming stronger and stronger. Many of the corpses were even trembling slightly, as if they were about to come to life. What was the source? Lin Feng's mind was filled with huge question marks. As the pressure increased, his speed increased again. "I'll go all out." Lin Feng gritted his teeth and ignored the restraints as he moved forward against the pressure. The darkness seemed to have descended, and it became more and more terrifying. A destructive force filled the entire cemetery. Lin Feng was immersed in deep darkness. This place, even the 4 demon emperors had not entered. Because of the existence of the death aura, it did not distinguish between friend and foe. It was a completely active attack. Even the strongest of the 4 demon emperors, Niu Yunlei, did not have a strong defense like Lin Feng. However, Lin Feng was not the first to enter this place. Before him, the great sage was the real first. What was it? What was it? The huge question in Lin Feng's heart was finally answered at this moment. A shocking scene appeared in front of him. Lin Feng took a deep breath, as if he was suffocating. As far as his eyes could see, there was a real giant standing in the deep darkness like a pine tree. The dark light was emitted from the feet of the giant. A formation. It was like a restriction, but also like a formation. It was like an engraved formation, but it emitted a dense dark color and flashed with a bright light. The giant's body was 10,000 meters tall, like a mountain. Its terrifying muscles were filled with explosive power. Even if it was just standing there, even if it was dead, it still exuded an extremely powerful aura, causing people to tremble in fear. It was as if it was the sky, the earth, and the king. Looking at it, one would have a feeling of submission. It was a real emperor, unreachable. Who was it? Huff, huff. Lin Feng took a deep breath, his heart beating violently, and looked up. The power that made him feel fear came from this abyssal, demon-like giant. He was surrounded by a dense aura of darkness and death. The gray energy was spreading out from him like a plague. The light of the restriction under his feet kept flashing, as if it was locking the giant. It was extremely strange. At this moment, swoosh, Lin Feng suddenly opened his eyes wide, and his heart seemed to stop. The eyes of the abyssal, demonic giant lit up. Chapter 1539. The change was extremely fast. Lin Feng only felt that his heart stopped beating at that moment. His soul seemed to be sucked into the bottomless abyss, into the endless darkness. But in the next moment, bang! A thunderous sound resounded, instantly waking Lin Feng up. The shield of truth burst out with a deafening explosion. A corner of the upper part seemed to be shattered. The transparent light was faintly discernible, as if it was dispirited. The dense aura of death even surged in like locusts, rushing into his mind. Countless images of malicious ghosts violently attacked in his mind. Lin Feng's eyes instantly turned red. Thump, thump, thump. Pang Ran could only hear his own heartbeat. He only felt the arrival of terror. In his mind, the limit of the illusion was being attacked. His body trembled violently. In an instant, Phoenix fire, Lin Feng shouted, his eyes shining brightly. Clenching his teeth, his power erupted wildly. Dense flames appeared around his body, firmly protecting him. The power of the illusion was instantly reduced by more than half. Lin Feng's expression changed greatly. At this moment, he couldn't care about anything else. He turned around abruptly and retreated as fast as lightning. Too terrifying. This was almost instinctive. Whoosh, whoosh. The extreme speed burst out, breaking through the darkness. Lin Feng's entire back was soaked in sweat. His heart seemed to have stopped beating. He felt as if he had taken a trip to the gates of hell. The dangerous scene just now was deeply imprinted in his heart. He still couldn't recover from it. What kind of power was that? He didn't even see the attack coming and was already stunned. Too fast, too strong. If the shield of truth didn't have the ability to protect itself, he was afraid that he would have died. The power of the abyss demon could even damage the shield of truth, which was known as the ultimate defense of the Doling world. How terrifying was that? One had to know that the defensive power of the shield of truth could even block Sorcerer King Zhong's strongest attack, but now it was almost useless. He completely lost his senses. This proved that there was indeed no limit to power. The so-called absolute defense, the so-called strongest power, was actually only relative. There was always a higher mountain. Thump! Thump! The phoenix flames burned fiercely around his body. Lin Feng was like a fireball passing through the darkness, becoming a ray of light. Still in a state of shock, Lin Feng's expression turned grave. His premonition was indeed correct. There was indeed an unimaginably terrifying power in the depths of the cemetery. After a long time, Lin Feng's chest heaved up and down as he landed on the ground. Although he was still in this darkness, the feeling was completely different. It was as if he had returned from hell to the mortal world. He panted heavily as a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He felt as if he had just survived a calamity. The Doling world was truly filled with all sorts of strange things. Even with his current strength and the protection of the shield of truth, he had nearly lost his life. If his mother was in danger, what was so strange about losing contact? Well, mother, thinking of this, Lin Feng's brows furrowed again, and he felt uneasy. If his mother had encountered this abyssal demon like him, would she have been able to escape? The answer was obviously no. No, mother is still alive. Lin Feng immediately shook his head. Although he did not know where his mother was, blood was thicker than water. His intuition told him that his mother was not dead. She might not be here. Indeed, mother came to find star origin stones. Why did she enter this cemetery? Could it be that she wanted to dig a grave? Lin Feng smiled helplessly. He had overestimated himself. He had wanted to destroy the source of the death aura. Who would have thought that he would almost lose his life as well? This abyssal demon could not be described as just terrifying. Is he alive? Lin Feng thought to himself. His heart was filled with doubts. Even if he still has vitality, it would be severely limited. Otherwise, how could I have escaped? Lin Feng thought to himself. The difference in strength between him and the abyssal demon was like heaven and earth. There was no comparison at all. The abyssal demon had only used one attack to shatter the defense of the shield of truth. If the abyssal demon launched another attack, there was no way he could escape. But now he was still alive. Who? Lin Feng took a deep breath and calmed his mind. It was useless to think too much. With his current strength, he could not shake this terrifying existence. As for his origin, when the time comes, if we can restart the Netherworld ship and awaken more, we will know, Lin Feng said. With his experience, he would definitely know who this abyssal demon was. The plan now was, since we cannot destroy the source, we can only make do. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Burn these corpses. Nodding slightly, Lin Feng's thoughts were clear. Anyway, the abyssal demon was too far away to do anything. What could he do to him if he burned these corpses? Although he could not prevent future troubles, he could at least cut off an arm of the monster race. Lin Feng's eyes flashed. Just as he was about to take action, he suddenly froze. He clenched his fists and looked around him in confusion. Strange. The phoenix flames did not react. Lin Feng was stunned. The phoenix flames that fused the fire of devouring and the fire of rebirth increased the defensive power of the fire of rebirth to a whole new level. Ever since he entered this graveyard, the aura of death had been continuously attacking him. His shield of truth was able to react to the aura of death without any interruption. However, his phoenix flames did not react at all. It was as if the aura of death had disappeared. It did not disappear. Lin Feng's eyes shone. he could still feel the intense aura of death. It was rather dense. However, his body could also sense it clearly. He did not encounter any attacks from the aura of death. It was as if he had become immune to the aura of death in an instant. Strange. It was extremely strange. What's going on? Lin Feng frowned slightly. He was puzzled. From the moment he entered to the moment he came out, only the blink of an eye had passed. Even if it was going to change, it should not have happened so quickly. Could it be that he had become immune to the aura of death after being stared at by the abyssal demon's eye of evil? This was too strange. However, the truth seemed to be right in front of him. Pa! Lin Feng closed his eyes and calmed down. Although he was still in shock, he was already safe enough. He was far away from the abyssal demon. Hua hua! The aura slowly spread out along with his body. Lin Feng took a deep breath, and the phoenix flames slowly disappeared. The energy in the surroundings was like silk threads, and each strand of energy was like a star that adorned the starry sky. Everything was clearly imprinted in his mind. The aura of death, gray energy, it was rather dense. It occupied more than 99% of the energy aura in this place. It entered the corpses of experts and covered the entire space. As for where he was, how could this be? Lin Feng's expression changed greatly. At this moment, the aura of death was rushing into his body at an extremely fast speed. Chapter 1540. He turned pale with fright. Lin Feng was dumbfounded. The sudden change caught him off guard. He knew how terrifying this gray energy was. Although it had the ability to increase one's strength, there were always losses. The more gray energy one had, the stronger one's strength and potential would be, and the easier it would be for the gray energy to control one's mind. In the end, one would become a puppet. One's soul consciousness would be eroded and destroyed. No, Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he came back to his senses. With his strength, even if the gray energy wanted to erode him, it couldn't have done it silently and without him noticing. Not to mention, he had the protection of the Phoenix Fire. Although its defensive power couldn't compare to the Shield of Truth, the Phoenix Fire could still defend against any external attacks, including soul attacks. The gray energy had energy. There was no reason for his body to absorb other energy without sensing it, unless it's not my body that's absorbing the gray energy. Lin Feng's eyes were burning. He calmed down and carefully sensed where the gray energy was going. It was indeed around his body, as if it was being absorbed by him. But in fact, after careful observation, it wasn't him who was absorbing it, but the Shield of Truth. There's no sense at all, Lin Feng said to himself, his eyes sparkling. Light flashed in his hand. The Shield of Truth seemed to have undergone a complete makeover. It was completely different from before. After being stared at by the Abyss Demon, not only was the Shield of Truth's defense broken, it was also seriously damaged. It was like a warrior who had lost the ability to fight, but now it was strangely absorbing the death energy. What was going on? Before the first wave subsided, another wave came. Lin Feng frowned. He couldn't understand. After all, the Shield of Truth's function was to defend and not to devour. He couldn't see anything with his eyes, but he could feel it clearly. The Shield of Truth wasn't just absorbing the gray energy, it was absorbing it at a very fast speed. It was so fast that it was crazy. It was thousands of times faster than the corpses around it. It was a very strange change. Lin Feng pondered. He wasn't worried that the Shield of Truth would explode. After all, it was a heavenly treasure that far exceeded the power of a Saint King. But he was very curious. Why would the Shield of Truth absorb the gray energy? What was the use? The two types of energy were polar opposites. After a long time, exhaling deeply, Lin Feng shook his head. The only explanation he could think of was that the Shield of Truth had lost its defensive capabilities after being damaged, and was then corroded by the gray energy. After all, the corrosion of the gray energy was indiscriminate, and the Shield of Truth had another form of soul. Give up. Since he couldn't stop it, then let it be. Anyway, with the material of the Shield of Truth, a mere gray energy would never be able to destroy it. Similarly, the gray energy and the death aura were inexhaustible. No matter how much of it was absorbed, as long as the cycle continued, and as long as the abyssal demon giant still existed, the spiritual energy would continue to be absorbed, converted, absorbed, and converted again. Again and again. There's not much time left. Lin Feng's gaze was deep as he thought to himself. Although the great sage and his doppelganger were engaged in a lively chase and had emptied their defenses, no one could guarantee when the great sage would realize that he had been lured away. Moreover, he had finished exploring the cemetery, and there was no trace of his mother. In other words, his mother was still in another area within this area. Hurry! Lin Feng already felt a sense of urgency and pressure. He had to break the demon race's trap, and he had to save his mother before the great sage returned. Therefore, he had to work very hard and make every second count. Right now, he had to burn these corpses first. Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Sage King level, demon race elite. Lin Feng stood in front, looking at the robust body that seemed to be faintly conscious. The phoenix fire in his hand roared, filled with a strong devouring power. Fusing the fire of devouring and the fire of rebirth, the phoenix fire greatly increased the power of both. Although the fire of devouring and the fire of rebirth were still at the Sage King level, the phoenix fire was truly starry sky level flame. It was on the same level as the realm of spear techniques. A mere Saint King's corpse, burning it to ashes was as easy as blowing off dust. Bang! Flames appeared. There was no mercy in Lin Feng's eyes, because these corpses were already dead. Right now, he just had to completely destroy the corpses. Go! Flames filled the sky. The phoenix fire in Lin Feng's hand seemed to come alive. A blood-red phoenix flew towards the Saint King-level demon clan expert, who was already trembling slightly. In an instant, flames surrounded him. The gray energy could not resist at all and was directly destroyed by the flames. However, Lin Feng frowned. His heartbeat seemed to have some reaction. Just as the phoenix fire touched the corpse and burned it, the shield of reality seemed to have sent a message. A strange message. What was it? What a strange feeling. Lin Feng thought to himself, puzzled. The phoenix fire in front of him had already dissipated, and the corpse of the Sage King-level elite demon had also turned into ashes. At this moment, the shield of reality's reaction suddenly stopped. The scene just now was like an illusion, like a dream, but his feeling was definitely not wrong. Swish! His eyes lit up. Lin Feng's expression turned serious as his heart moved. In a flash, he appeared in front of another corpse. This corpse's strength was similar to that of the Saint King Realm Demon Clan expert, and it was also located closer to the center. The absorption of the gray energy was reaching saturation point, and its eyes flashed slightly. It was filled with a dark energy aura, as if it was about to awaken. Bang! The phoenix fire appeared again, but this time its color was much dimmer, and it was only a small cluster. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Since the shield of reality could sense it, then he would give it a try. Facts spoke louder than words. Boom! The phoenix fire instantly descended, breaking through the gray energy barrier again. But this time, it was completely different. The phoenix fire's offensive power was maintained at a relatively low level, and the moment the phoenix fire broke through the gray energy barrier, the corpse was instantly set ablaze. And at this moment, the shield of reality's message, indeed, clearly transmitted to his mind. This time he sensed it. Wah! Lin Feng's eyes lit up. They were filled with shock, but gradually turned into joy. This was a communication between souls, a conversation between hearts. As a heavenly treasure, the shield of reality had its own consciousness and soul, so it could naturally communicate with its owner. How could it be damaged so easily? Chapter 1541. The treasure had gained sentience. It was a kind of mental communication. There was no need for words or words to be understood clearly. The shield of truth was indeed injured, and it was not a light injury. However, due to its special material and powerful energy, this injury would not be fatal. As it absorbed the power of heaven and earth, the shield of truth would slowly repair itself. It was just that its defensive ability could not be used for the time being. However, what was lost at the swings was gained at the swings. Not only can the shield of truth absorb the aura of death, but it can also absorb it for its own use. Lin Feng's eyes lit up slightly. The aura of death was also a kind of energy. He knew this very well before, but it was incompatible with the energy of the Douling world. However, the category of energy would not change. To a certain extent, he had to thank the abyssal demon for the shield of truth absorbing the aura of death. If it were not for that terrifying attack, how could the shield of truth comprehend the aura of death? This was a blessing in disguise. The aura of death can not only be converted into power of heaven and earth to repair the shield of truth, but it also has a huge function, Lin Feng said softly. He knew very well how powerful its function was. It could directly affect the soul itself. It had powerful abilities and side effects. However, there was one thing he did not have to worry about. The shield of truth would not be assimilated by the aura of death because its soul was far beyond the energy level of the aura of death. Unless the abyssal demon personally came, no matter how much aura of death there was, it would only be a pure and powerful energy to the shield of truth. And these were only the changes on the surface. The real change was that one could draw inferences about other things from one instance. What kind of existence was the shield of truth after absorbing the aura of death? Infinite space. Lin Feng's eyes sparkled. The shield of truth had infinite spatial layers. The southern region's god-making plan could proceed smoothly because of the shield of truth. The shield of truth was so huge that it could easily accommodate countless experts who entered it to train. It did not feel crowded at all. Although the shield of truth had lost its energy due to its injury, its structure would not change. Moreover, the aura of death it absorbed had turned the energy it contained into gray energy. In other words, the current shield of truth was equivalent to a mini cemetery. And this mini was only on the surface. Move these corpses into the space of the shield of truth, and they will be able to continuously absorb the aura of death, little by little, until you revive. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly as his chest heaved up and down. What did this mean? He would have countless undead servants. Furthermore, each and every one of them was a saint or even a saint king. They were not afraid of death and were extremely loyal. Those corpses were actually another living system, just like unborn magical beasts. Once they broke out of their shells, they would possess consciousness and intelligence. As the being that gave birth to them, the shield of truth was their parent, and as the one who directly controlled the shield of truth, he had the right to control them. Phew! Lin Feng took a light breath, and a smile appeared on his face. A blessing in disguise. Even though the shield of truth had temporarily lost its abilities, it could still act as an intermediary and possess a very special and powerful power. Perhaps it wouldn't be of much help to him, but it would play a decisive role in the southern region, the human race, and even the entire Dou spirit world. If I can use all these corpses, the strength of the southern region will increase dramatically overnight and reach an unprecedented level. Without the protection of the shield of truth, neither the wizard race nor the demon race will dare to mess with the southern region. The southern region will truly have the ability to survive in this chaotic world and even stir up the situation. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly, and he was full of confidence. He had made a huge profit this time. Swoosh! Swoosh! Lin Feng was extremely fast. Like a gust of wind, he left nothing behind in his wake. The shield of truth kept flashing as the corpses of the powerful cultivators entered it and became a part of it. The aura of death was absorbed at a terrifying speed and then used as nutrients to nurture these children, just like a mother. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 corpses had been absorbed. The aura of death is limited. Leave the corpses of the saint-level cultivators to the demon race. I only need the Saint King cultivators. Lin Feng had already made up his mind. Although the space of a shield of truth was huge, only this cemetery could absorb the aura of death. Although the shield of truth already understood the structure of the aura of death and could absorb the power of heaven and earth and convert it into the aura of death, it was still very slow and would delay the repair process of the shield of truth. It was best to avoid it. Moreover, the demon race would quickly discover the disappearance of the corpses in the cemetery. But now, there were hundreds of corpses. Unless the demon clan counted them one by one, or if they really entered the cemetery, it would not be so easy to find them. It's about time. There's no need to be too greedy. If I can revive all these corpses of the Saint King cultivators, the southern region is already powerful enough. Each of them is an existence that can fight against 100. Lin Feng sighed softly. He sensed that the aura of death in the shield of truth had begun to deplete rapidly. It was not easy to nurture so many children at once, but compared to the absorption speed of the shield of truth, it was just a drop in the ocean. The more, the better. I don't know when I'll come here again. Every bit of aura of death that I can absorb is better. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He looked into the distance, and then back at the deepest part of the cemetery, where the abyssal demon was. There was still lingering fear in his heart, but he seems to be bound by some kind of power. As long as I don't see him, I'll be safe. Lin Feng thought to himself. Soon, he returned to the deepest part of the cemetery. After all, the deeper he went, the stronger the aura of death would be. The shield of truth would absorb it faster and save more time. In this situation, time was of the essence. The time it took to finish a cup of tea was gone. Huff, huff. Lin Feng opened his eyes and took a deep breath. At this moment, the aura of death around him was quite thin. Although the conversion speed of the aura was extremely fast, it could not withstand the shield of truth's absorption. The aura of death was not even 1% of what it was when he entered. He had absorbed enough, and the efficiency of absorbing any more was minimal. He should stop while he was ahead. I believe it's enough to nurture these corpses for a while. Lin Feng thought to himself, his eyes burning. At this moment, there was something more important waiting for him. Swoosh! Like a bolt of lightning, Lin Feng instantly dashed out. He left the cemetery and continued to explore. Chapter 1542. Leave. Everything went very smoothly. Even though there were obstacles when he entered the cemetery, leaving was like opening a door. There were no obstacles at all. After passing through the thick barrier of death and returning to the isolated island, Lin Feng floated in the air and took a deep breath. It felt like a lifetime ago. Who would have thought that such a huge secret would be hidden in this barren and desolate area? The hidden trump card of the demon race. And that abyss demon with unknown origins and unfathomable strength. If this abyss demon were to come out one day, who in the Douling world would be able to stop him? A thought suddenly appeared in Lin Feng's mind. He smiled and shook his head. The answer was obviously no. Even the strongest person in the Douling world, the shaman Emperor Di Jiang, who had a heavenly treasure, was no match for him. Right now, he was like an ant in front of the abyssal demon. The difference in strength was too great. It might not be a living thing, Lin Feng thought. After all, the Douling world could not possibly contain a terror that far exceeded its strength. Moreover, if this abyss demon was really a member of the demon race, there would be no need to fight the war of the shamans. The outcome would have been decided long ago. How would there be a second or third war of the shamans? If I can awaken to do, I will definitely be able to find out the origin of this abyss demon. Lin Feng's eyes widened slightly. His body was as fast as lightning as he left the isolated island. Although his doppelganger was still luring the demon race commander, the great sage was already bursting with anger. He did not know when he would explode. There was not much time left for him. After all, the great sage was the demon race commander. How could he be as dumb as a pig? He was just blinded by anger. Whoosh, whoosh. Without any hesitation, Lin Feng pushed his speed to the limit and left the isolated island in the blink of an eye. Back to the sea. Phew! Lin Feng took a deep breath. He felt extremely carefree as he sensed the rich spiritual energy in the air. The cemetery was like a world without oxygen. It made it difficult for him to breathe. If he fought in the cemetery, his strength would be greatly affected. This was the real Doling world. It was the real land of spiritual energy. Pa! The positioning compass was activated again. It was no longer affected by the magnetic field. The light below lit up again. It could still be used. Sure enough, it's just that it can't be used in the cemetery, Lin Feng thought to himself. Although there is a magnetic field in the cemetery, there are no restrictions on leaving. Perhaps there are many dangers, but there aren't many traps. If Mother wants to leave, she can leave at any time. She shouldn't be trapped here. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he looked around. At this moment, he was even more certain of his judgment. Although the probability of this isolated island was quite high, the facts proved that Mother was indeed not here. Where would it be? Hua! Lin Feng felt a chill. Another thought suddenly appeared in his mind, and he clenched his fists tightly. The forbidden area of the Yao clan. Any place that could be guarded by a demonic beast commander was definitely the most important place for the demonic beasts. Just like the ancestral Magi Palace of the Wu clan, there must be secrets and treasures of the demon clan hidden in the forbidden area of the demon clan. Lin Feng murmured to himself. His thoughts were becoming clearer and clearer, and he seemed to be able to understand his mother's thoughts. In the entire Doling world, the witch tribe and the demon tribe were like two warlords, and they had even gone through two great witch tribe wars. If there were treasures in the Doling world, more than 80% of them would be in the pockets of the witch tribe and the demon clan. Instead of searching aimlessly, it was better to go straight to the root of the problem and look for the treasures that might already exist. Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he nodded. I understand now. Mother must have had the same thoughts as me. That's why she secretly entered the forbidden area of the demon clan to look for treasures. However, since it was a forbidden area of the demon clan, there must be many restrictions and traps. Therefore, it was reasonable for Mother to be trapped in the forbidden area of the demon clan. The cemetery has magnetic field interference. I believe that the forbidden area of the demon clan has magnetic field interference as well. Once I try, Lin Feng thought to himself as he increased his speed. Whoosh! Like a gust of wind, Lin Feng's aura spread out. At this moment, he no longer had any scruples. The great sage was not here. Even if a demon emperor was guarding this place, he had nothing to fear. So what if he was discovered? He had already been discovered by the great sage. Now, he was discovered again. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly as he sped up. Soon found it. Lin Feng gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He did not find the aura of a demon expert. Instead, he found an area that could block his aura detection. This was not a kind of force, but a kind of magnetic field. Aura detection was done through the diffusion of spirit energy. Once the magnetic field changed, it was like erecting an iron wall in the middle of the road. Aura naturally could not enter. This was a change in the magnetic field, and what he was looking for was another magnetic field, the true forbidden area of the demon clan. Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes flashed with hope. His body trembled slightly as he sped forward. He was not afraid or nervous. Instead, he was excited. Hope reappeared. It's here. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he floated in midair. From afar, it was a real pang ran. Instead of calling it an island, it was more appropriate to call it a tower. It was like an existence that was completely transparent. Upon closer inspection, the entire tower was composed of 7 floors. Or rather, it was composed of 7 islands. Other than the largest base island that was located on the surface of the sea, the other 6 islands were simply floating in the air. It was extremely strange. However, this was not the true wonder of the 7 islands. The most essence was located at the top of the 7 island towers. Lin Feng took a light breath as his eyes lit up. The top of the island emitted a dazzling light, as if it was the only light in the sky. The powerful suction force was like a black hole, gathering the spirit energy from all directions. Its existence was the center of the entire island tower. With it, as the top, fine spirit energy light scattered down, forming transparent lines that connected the entire island tower together. Even from so far away, he could clearly sense the enormous vitality and astonishing spirit energy. Compared to the cemetery, it was like the black and white sides of the world. If my guess is correct, this is the true forbidden area of the demon clan. Lin Feng's eyes lit up as he nodded deeply. His aura could not penetrate it. With the top of the island tower as the center, it was self-contained and had a unique magnetic field that was isolated from the world. His gaze fell on the positioning compass. The light below was faintly discernible. It was obvious that it was greatly affected by the magnetic field. However, he could still clearly see this place was within range. However, it was completely unpredictable what kind of danger there would be in this island tower. "I'm here," Lin Feng spoke softly. The smile on his face did not show any fear. The power of a sage king erupted. He had broken into the demon clan's forbidden area alone. Chapter 1543. Bang! The blood phoenix accompanied him. Lin Feng's body felt like it was on fire, but he was already prepared for battle. Even though his aura detection couldn't enter the forbidden grounds of the demon clan, his senses were very clear. It was the intuition of a warrior, a sense of danger born from years of killing. Even though the great sage had been lured out of the forbidden grounds by him, how could he not be fully prepared when entering the tiger's den? Whoosh! Passing through the wall of spiritual energy, Lin Feng's eyes burned. The feeling was extremely similar to when he entered the cemetery. It was as if he had passed through space. A white light flashed in front of him. Before he could see anything, he could already feel a cold, killing intent rushing towards him. The bone-chilling coldness brought with it a heart-chilling power, as if it would tear everything apart. They came from all directions, blocking all paths of escape. As expected, Lin Feng said softly, but he wasn't surprised. The fact that the great sage could sense his presence in the forbidden grounds of the demon clan proved one thing. It wasn't that the great sage's senses were far superior to his, but that the forbidden grounds of the demon clan were very special. It was like a one-sided mirror. One side could reflect, but the other side couldn't. His whereabouts had been discovered long ago. After all, how could anyone in the forbidden grounds of the demon clan be weak? Phoenix fire. Lin Feng's tightly clenched fists suddenly loosened. The surging flames roared in an instant, and rich astral energy exploded, deeply imprinting itself into the phoenix fire. The terrifying power directly covered the killing intent in all directions. In a battle between warriors, the order of attack was different, but the most fundamental thing would never change. The strong were respected. Roar! Shrill cries instantly sounded, as if they came from the depths of one soul. As the cold light was drowned by the flames, the few demon clan warriors closest to it instantly tasted the feeling of being burned by 10,000 flames. They felt the power of the strongest human. Boom! 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 Lin Feng's hands gathered power, and he instantly blasted it out, his eyes shining brightly. He floated proudly in the air. At this time, his vision had recovered, and the red light covered all other colors. There wasn't the slightest smell of burning. However, anyone who was caught in the phoenix's flames would only end up being reduced to ashes. Even ordinary Saint Kings were no exception. Slap! Lin Feng's expression was calm as he looked around. The demon race's rising attacks and killing intent had now completely disappeared. Wherever the phoenix fire passed, nothing was left. More than a dozen demon race saint-level experts were all dead. Mournful cries could be heard from afar. Countless demon race experts were rushing over at an extremely fast speed from all directions. Their eyes were bloodshot as they wanted to avenge their clansmen. However, they had clearly overlooked a very important piece of information. How much stronger were they compared to the dead demon elites? It seems if I don't solve some problems, it will be very difficult to concentrate on searching in this forbidden area. Lin Feng's eyes flashed as he pondered in his heart. The flames in Yang Kai's hands rose again as a faint murderous intent leaked out. With his back against the light barrier of the forbidden zone, the strength of a Saint King realm high order was clearly revealed. Looking at these spirit demon clan elites who were brimming with killing intent, he felt as though he had returned to the Sky Martial continent, where each and every one of them were foolish magical beasts that were rushing to their deaths. What was the difference? Boom! On the other side. Whoosh! Whoosh! The great sage's eyes were bloodshot as he chased madly. The fire in his heart was burning fiercely. He hated Yang Kai to the bone. It was not that he hated Lin Feng deeply. He was completely enraged. A puny human had behaved atrociously in his territory and even offended him. Yet, Yang Kai had left just like that. How could he still have any face left? Furthermore, he had just ignited his battle intent and wanted to have a good fight. How could he have expected that the opponent he rarely thought highly of would actually run away? This was simply an insult to him. Where do you think you're going? The great sage was practically roaring. However, the distance between him and Lin Feng was sometimes close and sometimes far. It was as if there was an invisible barrier that prevented him from closing the distance. After chasing for an unknown period of time, the great sage's terrifying physique allowed him to maintain his composure, even though he was chasing at top speed. Suddenly, the great sage was slightly startled as his eyes instantly widened. As if he had sensed something, his originally calm chest heaved violently. He clenched his fists so tightly that his veins popped out. The fury in his eyes seemed to burn a hole in the sky. Roar! Roar! The great sage roared into the sky as his body trembled violently. In an instant, he turned and left like an arrow leaving the bow. He no longer chased after Lin Feng. Oh no! Lin Feng's eyes flashed coldly. At this moment, his main body was engaged in a bloody massacre in the demon race's forbidden ground. Countless elite demon race experts were killed, and the entire forbidden ground was in a tragic state. He could completely guess what had happened. The great sage must have received news or sensed something. That was why he left in such a hurry and was so furious. And once he left, things would become very troublesome. No, I have to delay him. Lin Feng gritted his teeth. Since his plan to lure the tiger away from the mountain had been exposed, there was no need to hide it anymore. He might as well directly expose it. This place wasn't close to the demon race's forbidden ground, but it wasn't far either. If the great sage rushed back like this, his main body would soon lose the opportunity to explore. It was simple to save his life. He just had to leave the demon race's forbidden ground. But if he wanted to enter the forbidden ground again, it would be even more difficult. Right now, this was his only chance. Swish! Lin Feng chased after him like lightning, cold light flashing in all directions. The situation instantly reversed. The two parties chasing after each other seemed to have switched roles. The only difference was Lin Feng's speed had truly exploded this time. Extreme speed. His eyes were red. The great sage wasn't stupid. Before he turned back, he could already feel the chill behind him. It was the same extreme speed as the Witch King Jiang. The great sage was so angry that his face was red. At this moment, if he still didn't know that he had been tricked, then he really didn't deserve to be the demon race's commander. He couldn't swallow this anger. But even if he was unwilling, he had to consider the big picture. The demon race's forbidden ground had been invaded repeatedly. The elites of the various royal families had been slaughtered. This was not only a matter of face and dignity, but also the future of the demon race. At this moment, which one of the demon race's forbidden ground hadn't been carefully selected and cultivated by the various clans? They were the elites of the elites. But now, it was as clean and crisp as a piece of tofu. The great sage trembled violently. Feeling the constant provocation behind him, his anger soared to the heavens. Suddenly, a terrifying power flashed with a green light and flew over. The great sage's eyes widened, but he couldn't react in time. His steel-like body hurriedly erected a powerful defense. Bang! Metal clashed. The terrifying impact, mixed with the power of astral origin, made the great sage's face turn green. He staggered, having underestimated his opponent. Green Dragon Ruler. Lin Feng floated in midair, his eyes cold and his expression cold. Want to leave? Not so easy. Chapter 1544. Demon Emperor Island. It was a bloody scene that was unbearable to look at. There were no corpses, but the tragedy of the battle was indescribable with words. Hundreds of demon clan experts died in Lin Feng's hands, and not even dregs were left. In fact, to the demon clan, the death of a few saint-level experts was nothing, but these demon clan experts on Demon Emperor Island were different. They were all super elites who possessed the royal bloodline of the monster race. Niu Yunlei, Kuei, Tianyuan, Xiangbao, and Fox Princess, the 4 demon emperors, which one of them did not cultivate quietly on Demon Emperor Island before they grew into demon emperors who would shock the world in the future. But now, their descendants died so miserably here in their own home. It had to be said that the cycle of karma was not pleasant. The 4 demon emperors did not expect that their backyard would be on fire, not to mention that there was the strongest demon clan expert, the Great Saint. In their opinion, even if the witch Emperor Jiang killed them, it would not matter, but today they were hit in the head by a puny human. Hum. The flames were intense, and Lin Feng's eyes were bright. The powerful phoenix fire was showing its ferocity. After receiving the last inheritance of the divine beast phoenix, Lin Feng was like the reincarnation of the phoenix. The crimson star mark on his forehead shone brightly, and he was much closer to the phoenix constellation, as if it was beside him. In the depths of his heart, everything was different. His strength was incomparably strong. The strength of his main body, even without the shield of truth, was already at the top of the pyramid of Douling world. It's quiet now. Lin Feng's expression was calm. He did not know the identities of the demon clan experts he killed. To him, they were just ordinary saint-level or even saint-king-level experts. In fact, even if he knew, he would still kill them. His goal was clear. In order to save his mother, Lin Feng did not care even if he had to become enemies with the entire Douling world. The spirit qi is really dense. Lin Feng's eyes were shining, and he thought to himself. Looking at his hands, he could clearly see the spirit qi rushing into his body. Even if he did not deliberately absorb it, the star source energy that he consumed was constantly replenishing. After a fierce battle, the star source energy in his body was still very saturated. Hua, raising his head, Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. Looking at the top of the 7-tiered island, there was a dazzling white light that resembled the stars. Spiritual energy surged from the top, and it was very similar to the structure of the graveyard. However, one was the aura of death, while the other was the power of spiritual energy. The density of spiritual energy here was much denser than any place he had ever seen. It's not unreasonable for the demon clan to be able to dominate the fighting spirit world and even overshadow the demon clan. Lin Feng pondered. The advantage of the demon clan was that they had a large number of people, but their talent was far inferior to that of the shaman clan. Only the 4 great royal clans and the 5 great royal clans had talent comparable to that of the shaman clan. But how many people were there in the 4 great royal clans and the 5 great royal clans? Not to mention that the vast majority of demons were not much different from ordinary humans. However, the demon clan knew how to make up for their disadvantages. The existence of this Demon Emperor Island was the key to why the demon clan had so many experts. No wonder the spirit qi in other parts of the sea area is so thin. Lin Feng nodded lightly. At this moment, he understood the general idea. If the entire sea area was seen as a big circle, then the demon clan's forbidden land, Demon Emperor Island, was located at the center of the circle. The spirit qi was absorbed from outside to inside, and the closer it was to this center point, the denser the spirit qi was. Therefore, the demon clan did not care much about the jurisdiction of the sea area. It was very loose, because they did not need to care about the desolate lands at the periphery of the sea area. They only needed to firmly control the center of Demon Emperor Island, and that was enough. The periphery is the same, and the seven-tiered island is the same. Lin Feng's eyes were bright, and his state of mind was extremely calm at this moment. After a round of killing, it actually calmed his boiling blood. Instead of blindly searching around, it was better to calm down and think carefully. Only then could he comprehend a lot. The closer to the top of the seven-tiered island, the more important it was. At the same time, the more important the place was, the tighter the defense, and the stronger the restriction. In other words, if his mother was trapped here, then the probability of her being at the top of the seven-tiered island was very high. Going straight to the top of the seven-tiered island from the start was the most foolish thing to do. If his mother was not at the 7th level, and he triggered the restriction, not only would he not be able to save her, but he would also be trapped. Even if he could break the restriction and leave in the end, it would definitely take a lot of time. After all, outside, the great sage was rushing over angrily. Let's go to the 5th level first. Lin Feng quickly made a decision. His body shot out like lightning, and he did not hesitate at all. The 4th level was the middle point. With his strength, the 5th level was the closest, and he was confident that he could contend against it. Would his mother be there? Bang! Lin Feng's fists were overflowing with flames, and he directly broke through the thin layer of light outside the 5th level. Rumble! 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 The entire seven-tiered island seemed to be shaking. The bright white light at the top was also affected, as if a sleeping giant was enraged. A terrifying force rushed down, and the impact of the white light was shocking. Lin Feng's expression changed instantly. It was very dangerous. As expected, it was not easy to directly enter the 5th level. 100 Phoenix! Lin Feng shouted. Behind him, a huge phoenix spread its wings and let out a cry, its power bursting forth. At this moment, the importance of the Shield of Truth was evident. If he could set up a complete defense, he could easily resist the attack of the white light above, and at the same time break through the light barrier outside the 5th level. But now, he had to split his power. Gritting his teeth, Lin Feng focused his mind. Crack! At this moment, he could not afford to be distracted. The power of the 100 Phoenix descended from the sky and directly collided with the white light attack of the spiritual energy. Instantly, a terrifying explosion erupted. Under the heat of the Phoenix fire, the light barrier became thinner and thinner, as if it was slowly melting. Time was tight. Faster. Faster. Lin Feng's eyes were bloodshot, and he was very anxious. The power of the 100 Phoenix kept erupting, but could not resist the white light wave's attack. At this moment, it was almost unable to resist. On this side, the white light barrier was not only defending, but also replenishing its power. If he failed this time, his power would be greatly depleted, and it would be even more difficult to break through again. Roar! Roar! Angry roars sounded in his ears. Without looking, he knew that it was the strong masters of the demon race. At this moment, the other strong masters of the demon race who were cultivating in seclusion on the island of the 7th level were all awakened. They came out of the island and attacked him together. Different from the last time, the strength of the strong masters of the demon race was much stronger than before. He could sense the power of countless sage kings. It was too late. Fight! Lin Feng clenched his fists and made up his mind. Bang! Bang! The attack of the 100 Phoenix completely ignored the white spiritual energy attack and directly hit the light barrier in front of it. At the same time, the white spiritual energy light wave was no longer blocked and directly blasted towards him. Bang! The Phoenix fire madly poured out, burning fiercely. Lin Feng's eyes were bloodshot, and his power was at its limit. Boom! A crisp explosion rang out. It was so pleasant to the ear. Lin Feng's eyes were completely bright. He could feel the terrifying white light wave's power above his head. It was close at hand. His body suddenly leaned forward, and in the nick of time, he entered the island. The terrifying power behind his head brushed past his body, and his entire back was soaked. Almost. If he was hit by the white light wave, even if he did not die, he would lose a layer of skin. Not to mention the aftereffects of failing to break through. With so many strong masters of the demon race surrounding him, even if he could escape, he would not be able to enter the 7th level of the island again. Fortunately, his luck was good at the crucial moment, and his desperate gamble paid off. Whoosh! Behind him, he could vaguely hear the angry roars of the strong masters of the demon race, but the broken white light barrier was instantly repaired. The spiritual energy of the 7th level of the island was terrifying. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long sigh. It felt like a lifetime had passed. Fortunately, he made the right choice. If he went straight to the 7th level, what would the consequences be? Without thinking, he knew that he could not resist the white light wave at such a close distance. Even with the protection of the shield of truth, with the power of the phoenix fire, he could not break through the white light barrier. The white light barrier could repair itself in minutes, and its speed was faster than its consumption. Furthermore, there were so many Demon Clan experts rushing over like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. He could not even enter the 6th level, and the 5th level was the limit. I'm finally in. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He took a deep breath to calm his mind. At this moment, he was not in a hurry. He patiently waited for his power to recover. The more anxious he was, the more chaotic he became. The light barrier outside was already so dangerous. What would it be like inside? He had to be fully prepared. Only then could he go all out and fight. Damn, would it be the 5th level? On the other side, boom, boom, boom. The battle was equally fierce. However, it was different from the battle on Demon Emperor Island. The battle here was completely one-sided. Lin Feng had completely defeated the Great Sage. The Green Dragon ruler attacked again and again. Lin Feng attacked the Great Sage again and again like a drowning dog. The Great Sage's face was ashen. Even though he was furious, he ignored Lin Feng. The first time he was attacked by the Green Dragon ruler, he was at a disadvantage. However, when he turned around and wanted to counterattack, Lin Feng instantly fled, not giving him a chance to do so. Once, twice, thrice, the Great Sage was furious, but he could not do anything to Lin Feng. He knew Lin Feng's goal very well, but he could not counterattack. He did not have long-range attacks, and he did not have Lin Feng's terrifying speed. He might as well go all out and let Lin Feng attack. The Great Sage was very confident in his own defense. The first time he was at a disadvantage was only because he did not expect it. However, after raising his defense, what was there to be afraid of? Apart from pain, it could not cause him any real harm. Pung! The Green Dragon ruler's power was fully unleashed. However, its damage was still limited. Even if it used all its strength, it could not stop the Great Sage. Lin Feng frowned slightly. He was secretly anxious. The Green Dragon ruler's grade was too low. Moreover, he had never cultivated the Green Dragon ruler, so he could not unleash its true power. What should he do? If this continued, the Great Sage would soon return to Demon Emperor Island. At that time, all his efforts would be for naught. Chapter 1545. He was caught between a rock and a hard place. Lin Feng's eyes flickered as he struggled to make a decision. The situation in front of him was very clear. It had changed from a conspiracy to an open one. He wanted to stop the Great Sage, but the Great Sage wouldn't let him stop him so easily. Although the doppelganger was strong, it lacked long-range attacks. The Green Dragon ruler was powerful and could injure ordinary Sage Kings or even Shaman Kings, but his opponent this time was none other than the Demon Clan commander. He had the strongest body in the entire Douling world and was one of the 2 most powerful experts. Even Shaman Emperor Jiang could not kill him. The Green Dragon ruler would not be effective against him. He had already deeply experienced his defensive power in the previous battle. It was far more terrifying than he had imagined. Even if he used all his strength, he would only be able to lightly injure the Great Sage. Fight? Lin Feng gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. He was definitely not the Great Sage's opponent. Moreover, it was different this time. The The great sage had suffered a loss earlier because he did not expect it. But now, if they fought in close combat, it would be harder for him to escape. It was very likely that the doppelganger would be entangled and exhausted, or even die in battle. But if he did not fight, not long after, the great sage would return to Demon Emperor Island, and his main body would not be able to search. He was extremely conflicted. Damn it! Lin Feng's face turned green, and his breathing quickened. If he was a little stronger, he would not be caught between a rock and a hard place like this. The only thing he could do now was to drag it out as long as possible. There was still some distance to Demon Emperor Island. His doppelganger had not reached the point where he had to sacrifice himself. Perhaps his main body could gain something during this time. He did not want to take the last step until the last moment. Since the Green Dragon Ruler's attack is useless, I can only rely on it to drag it out. Lin Feng's face turned serious as a blue light appeared in his hand. Whoosh! The dazzling blue light was mixed with rich astral origin power. In an instant, a terrifying power exploded. Even the eyes of the great saint, who was speeding ahead, lit up. He didn't need to look back to feel the powerful aura behind him. His body's defenses couldn't help but strengthen, but his speed didn't slow down at all. The great sage was extremely confident in his own defensive capabilities. No matter how strong this human Lin Feng's killing moves were, he had the confidence to contend against him. However, the great sage's face instantly turned green. Boom! Like a thunderclap, the surrounding space changed in the blink of an eye. Demon Underworld Lock. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly, and a blue light instantly blossomed. As the only blue-class heaven-ranked treasure that could enter the Do Ling's sovereign ranking, the Demon Underworld Lock strength was not inferior to that of an Indigo-class innate treasure. It was a control-type treasure that was extremely useful in battle. Not only could it perfectly coordinate with almost all offensive and defensive techniques, it also had the ability to restrict. Sizzle. Hiss. Hiss. Space warped, and it was like the hand of a devil was twisting the entire space. The Demon Underworld Lock was instantly released. Lin Feng's expression was extremely solemn. It consumed a lot of energy. However, he could not care about that at the moment. Bit by bit, it was distorted. The binding of space displayed an extremely powerful ability. Roar. An angry roar sounded. The great sage's eyes were bloodshot, and he was extremely furious. He had completely miscalculated. He thought that Lin Feng was using a direct attack, so he only set up a defensive barrier. He did not expect it to be a control-type innate treasure. His head shook violently. The power of space made the great sage's heart tremble. If it was any other time, he would not care about this kind of binding of space. However, in order to forcefully fuse with the heavenly treasure, the power of his soul was greatly depleted. At this moment, he was fighting with the weapon spirit. His soul, which was originally not his weakness, had now become his biggest constraint. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. He did not expect this. The first ability of the Demon Underworld Lock was not considered strong. The strength of a control-type ability was its flexibility. It could complement any other technique. If it was used alone, it would not be able to unleash much power. In the previous battle with Ao Jiang, the Demon Underworld Lock was mostly destroyed by Ao Jiang. As long as he used his offensive power to resist, he could seal the first ability of the Demon Underworld Lock. The fact that the Great Sage did not use his offensive power to resist was also within his expectations. However, with the Great Sage's strength, even if the Demon Underworld Lock was successfully used, how could it restrict him? He only wanted to buy some time. However, the Great Sage was like a headless fly. He was running around and lost his way. It was too strange. However, it was just right. Who cares what the reason is? Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The doubt on his face was instantly replaced by joy. Although he didn't know why the Demon Underworld Lock had such an unexpected effect, the truth was right in front of him. It was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise for him that a dignified demon commander was restricted by a mere Xiantian treasure. And now, strengthen it. Lin Feng's thoughts were clear. Since it was useful, he would strengthen it further. As long as the power of the demon underworld lock was not directly resisted by an offensive power, as time passed, the lock would slowly take shape. The power of the binding of space would grow stronger. At this moment, as he released his stellar source energy, the binding of space around him began to twist like a fried dough twist. It gradually took shape, forming the embryonic form of a lock. Boom! 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 Demons and ghosts charged forward in a frenzy. As the lock took shape, its strength gradually manifested. What was the demon underworld lock? Apart from the restriction of a control technique, the demon underworld lock's power lay in the fact that the demon underworld lock could attack. It was not an illusion, but a real attack. The power of the demon underworld lock, combined with stellar source energy, gradually increased over time. Body, soul. The power of the demon underworld lock was fully displayed for the first time. Pong, pong, pong. The great sage waved his cudgel angrily. The earth pillar in his hand shone with golden light. He continuously attacked, causing the entire space to tremble violently. He did not care about anything else. At this moment, he had completely entered a frenzied state of battle. If anyone blocked him, he would kill them. Hua, hua. The earth pillar's golden light grew stronger and stronger. It was in a critical situation. As the battle progressed, the earth pillar's fusion with the great sage grew closer and closer. To a certain extent, this was actually a win-win situation. If Lin Feng had not come, it would have been extremely difficult for the great sage to fuse with the earth pillar. But now, it was like a pair of mortal enemies deep in an uninhabited island. Facing the powerful existence on the island, they had no choice but to unite. The only loser was Demon Emperor Island and the demon race. Huff, huff, Lin Feng took a deep breath. His gaze was focused. Spiritual energy rushed into his body at an extremely fast speed. Not only him, but the shield of truth was also absorbing as much spiritual energy as possible. The density of spiritual energy here was 100 times higher than outside. It was as if there was nothing but spiritual energy here. The astral source energy that he had used up was almost instantly recovered. The rest of the spiritual energy was absorbed into the shield of truth and turned into the power of heaven and earth, quickly recovering. Looking around, Lin Feng's calmness was mixed with complicated emotions. Hope, anxiety, all sorts of emotions mixed together. The unique magnetic field was densely packed with spiritual energy. Although his aura could spread out, the range was very small. It was as small as an ant entering a country of giants. Even if he strengthened his aura, it would be useless. The astral source energy that he had was just a drop in the ocean compared to the spiritual energy here. Looks like I have to personally search everywhere, Lin Feng thought to himself. At this moment, he was not worried that other demon race experts would enter. The white halo outside had already recovered. Not to mention whether other demon race experts apart from the Great Sage had the ability to enter, just the restriction of the 5th level alone was enough to make the demon race experts not dare to enter easily. What was a forbidden area? Not only for humans, but also for the wizard race and the demon race themselves. Looking back, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Everything in front of him was clearly visible. The demon race experts were angrily pacing back and forth, but they did not dare to touch the white halo. Even his aura could spread through the white halo without any obstruction. The white halo only existed on the outside of that island. It did not have any restrictions on the inside. He believed that even if he wanted to leave now, he could easily leave. If Mother is trapped here, it shouldn't be difficult to leave, Lin Feng thought to himself, but his expression became even more serious. Obviously, there was only one reason why she could not leave, and that was that there was an even stronger restriction inside this 7-level island. Mother, she must have touched a restriction that exceeded her strength level. I have to be careful. I'll explore bit by bit. The more anxious I am, the more chaotic it will be. Lin Feng nodded secretly. At this moment, his clone had once again stalled the great sage. He had to admit that this was the best news. Ta! A raging flame burst out from Lin Feng's body, as he slowly moved towards the area with the densest spirit chi. It was empty. The entire fifth level of the island was somewhat unexpected. Lin Feng frowned slightly and carefully observed his surroundings. The emptiness of the island was unimaginable. However, even though it was empty, the number of star fruits on the island was extremely large. It was unimaginable. Rare species could be seen everywhere. Even the soul-returning fruit, which was extremely rare in the outside world, could be found everywhere here. This is because of the spirit energy. Lin Feng was not surprised. Spirit energy was actually the aura of life. It was the opposite of the aura of death in the cemetery. There were two cultivation paths for plants. One was to let nature take its course and grow into star fruits, step by step, following the heavens. The other was to forcefully cultivate like wings, going against the heavens. Obviously, there were no spiritual objects like wings here. After all, this was a forbidden area for the demon race. It was not only forbidden for humans and magi. Spiritual objects were also considered foreign objects. If there were, they would have been killed long ago. Pa, pa, pa. He casually plucked a few soul return fruits. It was a natural reaction. Lin Feng could not help but smile. Come out, wings. Lin Feng's eyes flashed slightly. In an instant, a light flashed between his eyebrows, and wings appeared. As his strength increased greatly, saint-level existences like wings and Hongling were basically not of much help to him. Therefore, he did not think of wings at first. However, this place seemed like a star fruit orchard. If he did not have time to pluck it, wouldn't it be faster to let wings do it? Wait, thinking of this, Lin Feng's eyes could not help but light up. Chapter 1546. He seemed to have forgotten where Wing's strongest ability was. That day in the Sorcerer Realm, Wing had made great contributions. Countless meteors, treasures, and various demonic beast cores had all been obtained by Wing because he had an endless supply of spies and clones. Each of the winged insects could fly in the sky and burrow into the ground. They were omnipotent. However, as his strength increased, the detection speed of his aura far exceeded that of the winged insects. After that, he had no other use. But now it was time to use them. I'll leave it to you, Wing, Lin Feng instructed. No problem, boss. Wing was rather excited. However, he had not had a chance to use his abilities for a long time. He felt rather ashamed and had been working hard to cultivate. Now, he was like a general in the army who had been put in an important position and was leading the troops in a battle. It was extremely honorable. In an instant, Wing's branches spread out like a fairy scattering flowers. Almost instantly, tens of thousands of winged insects flew out. Whoosh, whoosh, they were densely packed, and the scene was extremely spectacular. Pa! Lin Feng closed his eyes. His heart was calm as he shared Wing's vision. Countless images appeared in his mind. He did not need to move. Almost instantly, he discovered everything in the vicinity. There are no secrets that could be hidden. Where is that? Lin Feng moved. In an instant, his figure changed, and he sped over. He finally found a place that was different from the spacious land. He did not want to miss any clues or possibilities. In a huge natural cave, Lin Feng stood in the cave. The jagged stalactites were white and translucent, overflowing with spiritual energy. Just these stalactites were worth a lot. Even if it was just a short stalactite, the spiritual energy locked in it would be enough for a saint to absorb for a long time. There were at least tens of thousands of stalactites in the entire cave, and these were only the ones he had seen. There were even more that he had not seen. However, these were merely worldly possessions. Swoosh! His eyes lit up. Lin Feng looked at the stone wall in front of him. The demon clan's words were clearly visible. The current him was able to completely understand it. So, with the power technique left behind by the ancestors of the tyrannical bear clan, Lin Feng said softly. The words on top of the stone wall were inscribed with the essence and comprehension of the tyrannical bear tribe's cultivation and attacks. On the other side of the stone wall, there were many existences that looked like stone sculptures. The many experts of the tyrannical bear tribe were displaying their moves, and the concept behind them was profound. The legacy of the demon race. Lin Feng looked at the stone statues and understood. This was the evolution of the Tao of strength. The only difference was that humans were good at meditating and comprehending, while demons were lacking in comprehension. This kind of cultivation method was undoubtedly much more effective. After all, this was the true essence left behind by generations of demon experts. Shaking his head, Lin Feng turned around and left. Although these were precious, they were useless to him. Destroying these stone sculptures was meaningless and would only be a waste of time. Pa! Pa! The winged insects gnawed on the stalactites, densely packed together. Soon, the white and translucent stalactites with rich spiritual energy were diligently transported away by thousands of winged insects. Not a single stalactite was wasted. At this moment, whoosh! Galloping, Lin Feng suddenly increased his speed. However, he soon made a new discovery on the other side. An hour later, another cultivation ground. Lin Feng sighed in disappointment. After continuous probing, even with the help of the winged insects, he didn't find anything else on this huge island that seemed to be a collection of cultivation grounds. The tyrannical bear tribe, the dragon elephant turtle tribe, and the demon fox tribe. There were many relics left behind by the demon clan's ancestors. Many of them were very helpful to his cultivation. After all, his main body had a strong understanding of the Tao of fire, the Tao of space, and the Tao of time. He even had some contact with the Tao of strength. However, this wasn't the time to cultivate. What he wanted were restrictions. He wanted a dangerous place that could trap an expert like his mother. The more dangerous it was, the better. However, he didn't find any here. He didn't even see any dangerous places. Instead, he picked all kinds of supreme-grade celestial fruits. However, they were of little help to him now. We haven't reached the end yet. Lin Feng's eyes were burning. With the winged insect strength, they would have covered the entire island in an hour. However, the spiritual energy here was too rich. Therefore, the resistance was also very strong. Even their speed was greatly reduced. Therefore, after an hour, the winged insects still hadn't explored the entire island. However, according to his estimation, they should be done soon. Another 15 minutes, at most an hour, and the 5th level will be completely explored. Lin Feng thought to himself. Right now, the great sage was still trapped in the demon underworld lock. He believed that 15 minutes would be more than enough. However, what should he do if he couldn't find anything? Lin Feng frowned slightly. He was slightly worried and anxious. Just as he was thinking about this, a strange image suddenly appeared in his mind. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. It was a cylindrical light pillar. It was bright and clear. It was completely different from the other areas. I found something. Lin Feng moved. His figure instantly disappeared. On the other side, pung, pung. The great sage seemed to have gone mad. His bloodshot eyes were filled with rage. He had always been proud and arrogant, but when had he ever been so cowardly? Even when he was defeated by the Bull Demon King during the demon race's hegemony competition, he was also exhausted from the battle. But now he was inexplicably controlled by a human who was far weaker than him. It could even be said he had played him thoroughly. Even if he gave in again and again, that human was still insatiable. Boom! The earth pillar's radiance grew brighter and brighter. The great saint, who was completely focused on battle, had now completely transformed into a god of war. His body was clad in armor, and his sturdy body was invincible. The shadows of his staff that he brandished shone with golden light, becoming more and more perfect. The pure Tao of strength mixed with the Tao of metal and the Tao of space formed a triangular connection. The demon underworld lock was indeed powerful. However, the great sage was even stronger. Those ghosts couldn't even touch the great sage's body before they all died. Causing damage? That was overestimating the demon underworld lock. Every minute counts. Lin Feng's expression was serious. The stellar source energy in his hands was dense. He controlled the demon underworld lock. At that moment, it had completely materialized. The distorted space condensed into the shape of a lock and completely enveloped the great sage. It could be said that the demon underworld lock's first ability was unleashed at 120%. It was so strong that it had never been used before. However, the opponent he encountered was a pervert that he had never encountered before. Impressive. Lin Feng smiled bitterly. With the demon underworld lock's current strength, if he fought with Ao Jiang again, he would definitely be trapped to death. And yet, in the face of the great sage, it was like a cultivation tool. As of this moment, Meng Hao knew exactly what the great sage was doing. The great sage was using the demon underworld lock to unleash a never-ending stream of ghost attacks, and was rapidly fusing with the strange treasure. The golden light seemed to be corroding, slowly absorbing the heavenly treasure for his own use. The great sage's strength was already perverted. Once he fused with the heavenly treasure, it was difficult to estimate how strong he would be. However, what could he do? Let him be. Lin Feng nodded lightly, his eyes shining. Anyway, no matter how strong the great sage was, it had nothing to do with him. If there was a headache, it would be which Emperor Ao Jiang. Coincidentally, the witch tribe had won a few consecutive battles and was about to rise. If the great sage returned to fight, it would be beneficial to him. Most importantly, what ability did he have to stop the great sage? The great sage in front of him was in the state of a god of war. If he went up against him with his own strength, he would be courting death. Even if he removed the demon underworld lock, it would only delay his fusion. It would not benefit him at all. On the other hand, without the restriction order, the great sage would go straight to Demon Emperor Island without any scruples. That was not what he wanted. Since that was the case, he might as well fulfill his wish. There is still some time from here to Demon Emperor Island, plus the time he needs to fuse with the treasure. I believe that my main body will definitely gain something. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly, and he thought to himself. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure suddenly appeared. His eyes shone brightly as he looked in front of him. He was in the middle of the 5th level of the island. There was a bright pillar of white light, as if it was connected to the heavens and the earth. It was huge, majestic, and full of power. When he raised his head, he could not see the end of it. The pillar of light was a few hundred meters in diameter, and it was very eye-catching. This place was completely different from the other cultivation places he had seen. What was it? Perhaps this is a type of restriction. Lin Feng's eyes widened slightly as he thought to himself. Carefully looking at this white pillar, he could feel the same power as the white light circle outside. However, it did not seem to be too much of an obstacle. Instead, it was welcoming him in. Lin Feng's eyes shone slightly as he circled around this white pillar a few times. However, no matter which angle he looked at it from, there was no difference at all. Looks like I can only find out if I go in. Lin Feng slowly nodded as his eyes shone brightly. There was no need to hesitate because he did not have much time left. Whether it was danger or opportunity, he had to give it a try. Whoosh! Lin Feng entered directly with a serious expression. In an instant, it was as if he had arrived in an empty space. Before he could react, his body felt heavy. A terrifying pressure came from above, as if a huge mountain was pressing down on him. The terrifying impact of the spiritual energy made him completely unable to care about anything else as it pushed him straight down. Bang! Bang! Lin Feng's expression changed. He did not expect this. Whoosh! His body fell straight down. Lin Feng's eyes shone, and his mind was extremely clear and calm. The spiritual energy around him did not seem to have any evil intentions. Even the terrifying pressure from above did not have any substantial destructive power. It merely pressed him down. What was below him? Phew! Lin Feng sighed softly and nodded thoughtfully. I understand, Lin Feng murmured softly. Although his body resisted, he did not use all his strength. Instead, he let nature take its course and slowly descended. He looked down and saw that there was a chassis in this empty space. Lin Feng's eyes widened slightly as his body gently descended. His feet touched the ground, and the huge pressure from above disappeared in an instant. Hua! Lin Feng's eyes shone slightly as he stepped out. If his guess was correct, this should be the fourth layer of the island. Chapter 1547. Swoosh! Lin Feng's figure slowly appeared. His eyes sparkled as he looked around. The density of spirit qi was still rather shocking, but it was still inferior to the fifth level. The entire island seemed to be similar to the fifth level, but he knew very well that in terms of area, the fourth level was much larger than the fifth level. This was because the entire seven-level island looked like a pyramid from afar. Behind him was the white cylinder that was hundreds of meters in diameter. It was exactly the same as the one he saw on the fifth level. The answer was very clear. So this is the connection between the islands. Or should I say, a passageway? Lin Feng nodded slightly. The scene when he first entered the fifth level appeared in his mind. Countless demon experts were anxiously pacing around the white circle of light, but they did not dare to attack it. The reason was simple. Every island was like a place of cultivation. Only the truly powerful demons could enter through the white cylinders. He was probably the only one who could force his way in. The pressure from the top increases with each level. Lin Feng's eyes flickered. The scene just now was still vivid in his mind. He had personally experienced it, but he did not resist it too much. With his strength, he believed that it would not be difficult for him to return to the fifth level through the white cylinder. It was much easier to enter step by step than to force his way in. However, should he go back? Lin Feng's heart skipped a beat, but he quickly rejected it. There was no need to be so anxious. After all, Wing was exploring the fifth level. If there were any gains, he would be able to discover them immediately. Since he had come to the fourth level, there was no need to waste his time. Perhaps his mother was not on the fifth level, but on the fourth level, although the possibility was not high. He could not completely reject it. Many things seemed impossible, but fate made fools of people. Some things seemed easy, but it was harder than ascending to heaven. Things in the world were often unexpected. Whoosh! Lin Feng shot out like lightning. His speed was astonishing. With the experience of exploring the fifth level, he knew very well that he would not encounter any danger on this island, unless he encountered a restriction that could trap his mother. However, was his luck that good? Another 10 minutes passed. It's still the same. Lin Feng frowned slightly. The information he received from Wing had already covered more than 80% of the fifth floor. However, other than the cultivation grounds and the white light pillars, there was nothing else special. Of course, the harvest of star fruits was exceptionally bountiful. If these star fruits were given to young human cultivators with slightly inferior aptitude, but astonishing perception, they would definitely be able to create more Saint King Realm Masters in the future, Lin Feng thought to himself. Aptitude determines the lower limit. Comprehension determines the upper limit. Before reaching the saint level, aptitude was more important than comprehension. After reaching the saint level, comprehension was far more important than aptitude. Even though the physique of humans was weak and could be said to be at the bottom of the Do spirit world, there were always gains and losses. They possessed a considerable amount of intelligence and consciousness, and their perception was at the upper level of the Do spirit world. Even though it wasn't at the top level, it was still quite good. However, these were all for later. Right now, the most important thing was to continue searching. As time became more and more pressing, there were fewer and fewer opportunities. He was extremely anxious. Lin Feng's forehead was already sweating, and his breathing was slightly rapid. What to do? He was searching everywhere like a headless fly. Could he really find the location of the restriction that trapped his mother in a limited amount of time? Lin Feng clenched his fists. Even though he didn't want to admit it, he knew very well that the possibility was extremely low. The fifth level required almost 2 hours, so what about the fourth level? It would take at least 4 hours. If it was the third level, it would take even more time. His body trembling slightly, Lin Feng gritted his teeth. As if venting his anger, he suddenly sped up a little, but he didn't even realize it. Suddenly, Lin Feng suddenly quivered, and his eyes lit up. What he saw in front of him was vaguely different from before. It was an aura that was completely opposite to his own. A slender figure was right in front of him, and he could see it clearly. It wasn't a human, but a genuine demon clan master. It was the Demon Fox clan, one of the 4 royal families of the Demon Clan. Swoosh! The Demon Fox clan master reacted at this moment and turned his head abruptly. Ha! Lin Feng stopped in front of the demonic fox as he glanced over. From the eyes of the demonic fox, he could see a hint of trepidation in the demonic fox's eyes. Obviously, he knew of his existence. After all, the 7 levels of the island couldn't be seen from the outside, but there was no obstruction from the inside out. However, he didn't surround him like the other Demon Clan masters. What did this mean? Among the Demon Clan, there were also cowards who didn't care about things that didn't concern them, especially the descendants of the royal family who had a noble status. In their eyes, the other Demon Clan masters were just vassals. It didn't matter how many of them died. As for them, even a drop of blood was a big deal. Even though it was just a guess, from the eyes of the Demon Fox clan master in front of him, he could completely see what he was thinking. He was afraid of death, even if he was a sage king. Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and he instantly had a plan in his heart. All this time, he had been looking for a way to find his mother, to find the uniqueness of the Demon Emperor Island, and to find the location of the seal. However, many times, he didn't need to do everything himself. Just like the use of the 5th level of the wings, sometimes it might be easier to rely on others to solve the problem. Bang! The phoenix fire rose, and Lin Feng's killing intent was revealed. Violent star source energy instantly roared, and the power of the blood phoenix grew stronger as the star seal on his forehead shone brighter. The aura of a sage king was accompanied by the power of the starry sky, and in an instant, the aura reached its peak. The Demon Fox clan master's expression changed drastically, and he immediately staggered back. He was terrified. "You can't escape," Lin Feng said in a deep voice. His voice was full of arrogance, confidence, and a kind of arrogance, even if this was the Demon Clan's territory. He was not fluent in the Demon Clan's language, but it was enough for the Demon Fox clan master in front of him to understand. After all, the Demon Fox clan was recognized as the most intelligent clan among the Demon Clans, and even in the entire Douling world, the Demon Fox clan's intelligence was at the top, surpassing most humans. "Even if you kill me, you can't escape." The Demon Fox clan master's small eyes flashed, and his voice was very thin and slightly trembling. Even if he had forcibly suppressed his fear, Lin Feng's majestic killing intent made it impossible for the Demon Fox clan master to hide his true thoughts. It would be a lie to say that he was not afraid. As a member of the royal family of the Demon Fox clan, he had been doted on since he was young, and he had never been so close to death. Lin Feng smiled indifferently, and that calm smile made the Demon Fox clan prince even more timid, and he said in a trembling voice, "You, what do you want? I'm warning you, Let's make a deal." Lin Feng's smile slowly fell, and said a sentence that made the Demon Fox clan prince stunned. Chapter 1548. A Deal. The Fox Prince took a long time to react and squint his eyes. As smart as he was, he had learned a lot from a human's words. His current situation seemed to be better than he had imagined. "How can I believe you?" The prince of the demonic Fox clan said in fear. He didn't ask what the deal was because to him, nothing was more important than his life. No matter what this human wanted to do, it had nothing to do with him. He could just leave it to the other demons. He only wanted to stay alive. "You don't have to believe me, because you have no choice." Lin Feng's eyes were cold and filled with killing intent, causing the Demon Fox clan prince to shiver involuntarily. However, for a moment, he had let his arrogant nature show. He had forgotten that the meat was on the chopping board, and he really did not have a choice. "But killing you will not benefit me at all. As long as you cooperate, I will not go back on my word." Lin Feng's voice was sonorous. The Fox Prince's chest heaved up and down. His small eyes rolled, but he still took a step back in fear. He said softly, "All right, I believe you." Lin Feng nodded, but his face was still expressionless. Even though he was anxious, he could not show it. The fox prince in front of him was not a good person, but he could not be fooled so easily. Let me ask you, before me, did any other human enter this place? Or other demon forbidden grounds? Lin Feng's eyes flashed. He looked directly into the fox prince's eyes. His gaze was filled with determination. The fox prince did not dare to look directly at him. He bowed slightly and said hesitantly, "These days I've been cultivating yes or no." Lin Feng's voice suddenly became heavy and impatient. "No." The fox prince trembled and blurted out, "Should not have. If a human entered the forbidden grounds, there is no way I wouldn't know such a big thing had happened." Lin Feng nodded seriously. The great sage did not lie to him. With his status, there was no need to lie to him. Mother really did not come here before? A bright light flashed in Lin Feng's eyes as he rejected the idea. No. His intuition told him that his mother had definitely been here. However, she wouldn't have come as openly as he had. She must have used some other method to conceal her presence. Otherwise, his mother would have been killed by the great sage long ago. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Lin Feng wasn't willing to be entangled in this matter any longer, and he said, "How much do you know about this Demon Emperor Island?" The fox demon prince was taken aback and narrowed his eyes out of habit. "Speak." With a thunderous roar, Lin Feng widened his eyes and revealed his killing intent. His aura completely suppressed the prince of the demonic fox clan. The latter's face turned pale, and he didn't dare to think at all. He hastily said, "I'll speak, I'll speak." Don't be hasty. The demonic Emperor Island is divided into, with a glib tongue. The demon fox prince was afraid that he would anger Lin Feng again if he spoke too slowly, so he told Lin Feng everything he knew. In order to save his life, he was willing to reveal even the biggest secret, let alone this little secret. Lin Feng nodded slowly, his eyes twinkling. The facts proved that his guess was right. There were indeed various restrictions on the Demon Emperor Island, but there was more than one. The Demon Emperor Island has 7 layers, and each layer has a restriction, where the secret lies. The first layer contains the cultivation manuals of the various demon clans. The second layer contains the inheritance treasures of the various demon clans, and the third layer. He clearly remembered what the Fox Demon Clan expert said. There were a total of 7 layers of restrictions, and each layer was unique. However, this Fox Demon Clan expert only knew about the restrictions on the 1st to 4th layers, and he didn't know about the 5th, 6th, and 7th layers. From his words and expression, it could be seen that he didn't lie to him, because his strength was only at the 4th layer. As for the 5th and 6th layers, there weren't many Demon Clan experts who could enter, let alone the 7th layer. It was normal that he didn't know. There are many Demon Clan experts in the restrictions on the 1st to 3rd layers. Mother has no reason to be able to sneak in. Lin Feng calmly analyzed, and then deduced that the highest possibility was the 4th to 7th layers. Among them, the 7th layer didn't make sense logically, because even with his current strength, it would be difficult for him to enter. So how could his mother enter? In other words, the 4th, 5th, and 6th layers had the highest possibility of the restriction. Which one was it? The restriction on the 4th layer. The Demon Clan experts who enter will be protected by the ancestors, and their potential will be stimulated. Lin Feng said, although this Fox Demon Clan expert's strength was limited, and he didn't really enter, he was still cultivating on the 4th layer, and even if he heard about it, he would have a rough idea. Or, right now, he should enter the 4th layer to take a look? Just as this thought appeared in his mind, Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. At that moment, Wing, who had been exploring the 5th layer for more than an hour, finally made a real discovery. It was a thick black fog that covered the scene in front of him. It was like a dense fog, and this black fog appeared so strange in this place filled with spiritual energy. Restriction. This was definitely a restriction. Very good. Lin Feng clenched his fists, and he was overjoyed. After getting so much information from this Fox Demon Clan expert, he was no longer searching blindly, and he was undoubtedly one step closer to his goal. Whoosh! Lin Feng instantly turned into a gust of wind and went straight for the white, cylindrical passage. He didn't waste any time, leaving behind the Fox Demon Clan prince, who was a little stunned. After a while, he regained his senses and he broke out in cold sweat. To him, this was a narrow escape from death. Whoosh! Lin Feng's speed was extremely fast. Almost instantly, he entered the white, cylindrical passage on the 4th layer. The first time was unfamiliar, but the second time was familiar. This time, he was already prepared to enter again. Boom! His strength exploded, and Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. The huge pressure at the top had yet to arrive, and just as he entered that empty space, Lin Feng instantly increased his speed. He shouted fiercely, and the rich phoenix fire blasted towards the sky, meeting the blade. His body was strongly restrained, and every bit he went up consumed a lot of energy, but it was still within his tolerance range. Bit by bit, Lin Feng's expression turned serious, and hope rose in his heart. I'm here! Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and a faint layer of barrier could be seen clearly above him. It was faintly discernible like a veil, and it was almost exactly the same as the 4th layer. However, one was looking down, while the other was looking up. Boom! His strength exploded, and Lin Feng soared into the sky like a fire phoenix spreading its wings. Pa! Passing through that layer of seemingly transparent film, Lin Feng landed steadily above. The fire around his body was still dense, and his breathing was not chaotic at all. Even though he had experienced a confrontation with an expert, he was still unscathed. Obviously, going from the 4th layer to the 5th layer was not that strenuous for Lin Feng. Whoosh! Lin Feng left the white cylindrical passage in an instant. Fast. His speed was quite fast. Under the guidance of the winged bug, Lin Feng went straight for the restriction. Even though the distance was a little far, Lin Feng's speed was not a bluff. When he sprinted with all his strength, he was thousands of times faster than the winged bug. In a short period of time, he had already reached the area that the winged bug could see, the area of black fog. Phew! Breathing lightly, Lin Feng's expression was full of joy. Finally, he had arrived here. The 4th, 5th, and 6th layers were the most likely ones. In other words, the probability of his mother being here was more than 30%. I'm coming. Lin Feng's eyes were sparkling, and the phoenix fire covered his entire body. Even though what lay ahead was unknown, and he might be trapped inside, how could one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Hua! His figure flashed, and Lin Feng directly entered the black fog. It was like a dream. The black fog in front of him was just a layer of illusion. Only when he truly entered it did he realize what it was. A formation. The so-called restriction was actually the location of a formation. Hua! His surroundings were unpredictable, and his direction was changing every moment. He was spinning like a top. The door that he entered had already disappeared, and he was now trapped in a formation. Black fog brushed past his eyes like pitch-black clouds, and thunder could be heard from time to time. The path ahead was chaotic. Oh no, Lin Feng muttered, feeling anxious in his heart. He was not an expert in formations. At most, he could be considered a beginner. However, from the various formations he learned from Shun, a great formation master, he still had his vision and judgment. The level of this black fog formation was quite high. With his strength, if he wanted to break it by relying on formations, he might not even be able to do it in a year, let alone in a short period of time. There was only one way: break it by force. I just hope that the strength of the formation core of this formation isn't too strong. Lin Feng prayed secretly. It was possible to break the formation by force. As long as he had enough strength, he could break the formation by force, no matter how complicated it was. The strength of one attack could destroy an entire island, let alone a mere formation. Of course, the premise was that the strength of the martial artist far exceeded the strength of the formation, which was the power of the formation core. Bang! Bang! Flames burned brightly. Lin Feng's eyes completely lit up, and the power of the blood-colored phoenix condensed again. The strength of his body bloomed with the dazzling phoenix fire. The starry sky level power made the world pale. In front of him, the black fog was billowing, and the scene kept changing. Lin Feng clenched his fists and kept accumulating power. The power of the astral origin gathered in the phoenix fire, and the phoenix image behind him became clearer, as if the phoenix was reborn. His blood burned wildly. 100 Phoenix! Lin Feng roared, and the crazy phoenix descended like the wrath of heaven. Boom! Rumble! It went straight for the black fog. The flames were monstrous, and everything was eclipsed. Lin Feng's eyes lit up, and his strength completely erupted. When the black fog met the flames, it was instantly covered by the flames. The phoenix cried out, and Lin Feng's eyes were filled with hope. However, at this moment, something strange happened. Pa! Pa! The phoenix fire penetrated the black fog and entered the front, but it disappeared instantly, as if it was swallowed by a black hole. The phoenixes swooped down, and in this changing scene, they disappeared in an instant as if they had entered the turbulence of space. He couldn't even sense the slightest bit of their aura. His attacks were useless in an instant. Whoosh! The flames were still hot, and the astral seal on his forehead was still bright. But Lin Feng's face was a little ugly. His only hope was destroyed. This was bad. Chapter 1549. Clenching his teeth, Lin Feng's expression was solemn. His eyes stared straight ahead, seemingly calm, but his heart had already sunk to the bottom of the valley. The power, just now, even if it wasn't 100% of the original body's strength, it was at least more than 90%. However, it was silently swallowed by the black fog formation, like a stone falling into the sea, completely useless to the black fog formation. He had failed. Although he didn't suffer any harm, the consequences were quite serious. He was in big trouble. If he couldn't break the formation with absolute strength, then he must follow the prescribed order and unravel the mysteries of the formation. It was like a road with no shortcuts. If he wanted to reach the end, he could only take one step at a time and walk steadily. Damn it! Lin Feng clenched his fists, his veins popping. If it was a normal time, he wouldn't care, even if it took a little time. However, it was a race against time now, and there was no time to waste. Once the great sage returned to Demon Emperor Island, what would be waiting for him? Even if the original body could rely on the clone to summon out of the formation, he would lose the best opportunity to enter the restriction. If Mother was really trapped in the restriction, then the longer it was, the more dangerous it would be. What should I do? What should I do? Lin Feng frowned deeply. Looking at the black fog in front of him, he was extremely anxious. This Pang Rance formation was like an iron wall in front of him. His attack just now was like a heavy punch hitting cotton, and it was all absorbed. This black fog, wait. No, something is wrong. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He seemed to have found a clue, but he didn't dare to be sure. His eyes looked straight ahead, and doubts emerged in his heart. This was Demon Emperor Island, a forbidden area of the Demon Clan. What was the purpose of these restrictions? To stop the foreign experts? Lin Feng's eyes flickered, and then he shook his head. If the foreign experts really broke in, the defense of the Demon Clan would be useless. If the Demon Clan wanted to set up a defense, the most important thing would be Demon Emperor Island itself, not the innermost layer. Of course, there was indeed such a possibility. However, in his opinion, the greatest possibility for the existence of the restriction here should be stop the demons themselves. Lin Feng suddenly had an idea. Just like the existence of the white cylinder, only demon race experts with sufficient strength could enter layer after layer. As for those who were not strong enough, they would return to continue cultivating. It was the same for restrictions. The experts of the demon race who enter the fourth level of barriers will receive the protection of their ancestors and stimulate their potential. Lin Feng thought to himself, to some extent, this is similar to the God-making plan that I implemented. In other words, the existence of these barriers is very likely to be screening. Lin Feng's eyes instantly lit up. Select the most talented demon clan members and make them even more powerful. If the restrictions on the 4th layer were like that, then the restrictions on the 5th layer might be the same. If his deduction wasn't wrong, then to break through the restrictions here, it's power, it's strength. Lin Feng deduced, but he shook his head. No, with more than 90% of his strength, he still couldn't break through this restriction. If it was really based on strength, even if he wasn't strong enough, the entire Black Fog formation should have reacted. It was like throwing a stone into the sea. At least there would be some ripples, but there was nothing. Lin Feng focused his gaze and looked straight ahead. He pursed his lips and pondered. Or perhaps his deduction was wrong, and the entire Black Fog formation was indeed a genuine defensive formation that was set up to stop the foreign experts. Swish, swish. The Black Fog moved, sometimes fast and sometimes slow. Boom, boom. Thunder rumbled in his ears. What he saw and heard was like a demonic sound that constantly affected his thoughts. The objects in front of him seemed to be overlapping and changing, as if some demon was growing in his heart. Lin Feng quivered and his expression changed. Illusion? No, this isn't an illusory formation. Lin Feng pursed his lips and quickly deduced. Although he wasn't a formation master, he had a deep understanding of the basics of formations. This Black Fog formation wasn't an illusory formation, and its illusion felt like provocation. Yes, that was it. Hunt. His head shook, and Lin Feng instantly widened his eyes in realization. Understand now. Lin Feng's eyes shone, and he was pleasantly surprised. This Black Fog formation is very likely to exist for screening. But what it screens isn't real physical strength or essential strength, but the weakest part of the demon race, soul, mental strength. Huh. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly. His entire person changed in an instant. The vast star eyes and vast star eyes merged, and he entered his own state. In terms of soul consciousness, mental strength was his forte. Bang, bang, bang. With the appearance of mental strength, the scene in front of him instantly changed. It was as if he had passed through a door to another door. Lin Feng's expression changed instantly. The Black Fog in front of him instantly transformed into a huge demon god. Its entire body shone with black light, and only its bright eyes were filled with oppressive strength. Its palms, which were like palms, gathered terrifying power and suffocated him. Clang! It was like the sound of metal clashing. It was indeed a collision of mental strength. In his own state, the vast star eyes and vast star eyes were extremely powerful. The power of a heavenly soul master that he hadn't used for a long time bloomed like fireworks at this moment. Whoosh! The blood in his entire body boiled, and it was as if a phoenix had been reborn. Lin Feng instantly confronted the Black Fog demon god. At this moment, one red and one black were like two huge stars crazily colliding. Evenly matched? Wrong. Boom! The sound was like an earthquake, but it was the mournful cry of the Black Fog demon god. The black light was instantly overshadowed by the red light. Lin Feng's mental strength was extremely powerful. The moment the power of his eyes was released, it had already reached the Black Fog demon god, completely suppressing its aura. Although there was a huge difference in their body size, Lin Feng's strength completely suppressed the Black Fog demon god. Crack! Crack! It was as if it had shattered into pieces. The mournful cry of the Black Fog demon god still reverberated, but its body shattered like a mirror. In an instant, it shattered into thousands of pieces, and its power slowly disappeared. Its bright eyes were still majestic a second ago, but in the next second, they lost their luster and dimmed. The darkness slowly disappeared. Behind the Black Fog, it was replaced by bright colors that shone brightly. Whoosh! Lin Feng's eyes flashed, and his heart trembled. He was filled with joy. The feeling of being restrained disappeared in the blink of an eye, and the changes in the surrounding space could be seen clearly. If his guess was correct, the restriction on the 5th level was now It had been broken. Chapter 1550. The area in front of him suddenly opened up. Overjoyed, Lin Feng felt like he had seen the light at the end of the tunnel. It was a completely unexpected surprise. Whoosh! His bright eyes were filled with luster, and his hopes were multiplied. Good. Lin Feng nodded heavily, looking at the scene in front of him that was getting brighter and brighter. It was as if he had broken through a barrier and entered a new area. Most importantly, his mother was probably trapped in this place and couldn't leave. Now that he had entered, Lin Feng frowned slightly. He suddenly felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't put his finger on it. It felt like a certain thought contradicted itself, but he couldn't come back to his senses in an instant. His head felt like two ropes were tied together. While he was thinking, the light in front of him gradually dissipated after reaching a peak. Lin Feng looked forward and his eyes lit up. The doubts in his heart were immediately suppressed. He had finally entered. Lin Feng was slightly stunned. As the restriction was broken and the black fog formation disappeared, what he thought would happen didn't happen at all. The light in front of him seemed to have opened up a path, but as the light disappeared, he didn't change at all. He was still in the same place. Most importantly, his surroundings once again fell into silence and darkness. What was going on? Lin Feng frowned tightly. A huge question mark appeared in his heart. It was very strange. Could it be that I didn't break the black fog formation just now? Lin Feng couldn't help but wonder, but he instantly denied it. From the appearance of the black fog ghost to his killing, it really happened. He had also touched the restriction. Logically speaking, the black fog formation should have been broken, but why boom? His head shook violently. Lin Feng was shocked. His thoughts were still in a mess, but the space around him had changed in an instant. The loud sound was very similar to the thunder of the black fog formation, but it was stronger and more direct. It was as if a bolt of angry thunder had struck the top of his head. He could hear it clearly. It went straight to his eardrums and into his brain. The earth seemed to be shaking, but it was just an illusion. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He understood that this was an echo caused by the violent thunder in his head. A sudden change occurred. Hua, hua. The black fog appeared once again and gathered from all directions. He could not sense any energy aura in the surroundings at all, and was even more unclear about the source of the black fog. But just like that, the appearance of the convex calamity came without any warning, and he was almost instantly surrounded by the black fog. Lin Feng's expression instantly turned serious. He didn't move, nor did he need to move. Acting rashly without understanding the situation would only spoil the situation. The most important thing for him now was to figure out what was going on and make a plan before acting. This black fog. Lin Feng's eyes flickered as his chest heaved up and down. The feeling was completely different. When he first entered the black fog formation, the black fog felt distant and unfamiliar. However, the black fog in front of him seemed to be the same kind of black fog, but it gave him a completely different feeling. It was as if it had originally existed beside him, and its energy aura was even clearer. Lightly pursing his lips, Lin Feng felt more and more puzzled. But in an instant, like a tornado, the black fog that was originally surrounding him suddenly received an order, and its speed suddenly increased by hundreds and thousands of times. It formed a huge spiral shape and wrapped him in it. With lightning speed, it rushed towards him from all directions. There was not a single blind spot. Chua! Lin Feng's expression changed greatly. He wanted to move out of reflex, but he felt that no matter where he went, he could not escape from the black fog. There was an unknown energy in the entire space leading this change, as if a high and mighty emperor was controlling the entire world. See. Without needing to breathe, the black fog entered his 7 apertures and even his skin. It was like mercury flowing into the ground, pervasive. Thump, thump, thump. At this moment, Lin Feng could only hear his heart beating wildly, as if it was about to jump out of his chest. This feeling of being unable to control made him fall into a state of torment. He did not know what would happen in the next second. His face was pale and extremely ugly. His mind was rapidly tightening as he faced everything that was about to happen. The influx of the black fog's energy was like a group of enemies entering his body. He could not feel any kindness. That was his own body. Damn it. Lin Feng clenched his fists tightly. He felt as if he was standing on the edge of a cliff. If the black fog's energy reached out and pushed him, he would fall into the bottomless abyss and die without a burial place. No matter how strong his defense was, he would not be able to resist the black fog's corrosion from the inside out. But at this moment, a strange change occurred. See, the blood flowing through his body mixed with the black fog, as if they knew each other. Lin Feng's head shook violently. Suddenly, he felt the existence of the black fog. It was no longer the unfamiliar cold feeling, but a strange warmth. What was going on? Lin Feng's head shook, but he could not see the flash of the phoenix's true body behind him. The phoenix star seal on his forehead was bright and dazzling. Demon Emperor Island, the fifth layer of the restriction. Lin Feng's guess was right. This was indeed a selection and a test for the Demon Clan's experts. Any Demon Clan expert who could pass the test of the fifth layer of the restriction would receive a gift. It was a gift from the Demon Clan's ancestors. The Demon Clan's weakest was the soul, but why was the Demon Clan's four emperors' soul not inferior to the Wizard Clan's? That was the reason. Of course, it was because of their innate talent, but a large part of it was because of the existence of the fifth layer of the restriction. As long as the Demon Clan expert's soul could withstand the fifth layer of the restriction and had the Demon Clan's blood, he would be able to receive a qualitative baptism of his soul and truly transform into a top Demon Clan expert. Rebirth. Originally, even if Lin Feng passed the test of the fifth layer of the restriction, he would not be able to receive the baptism of the Black Fog's energy. He would even be destroyed by the opportunity left behind by the Demon Clan's ancestors. But Lin Feng was not an ordinary human. Not only did the ancient clan's blood flow in his body, but he also had the Demon Clan's blood, the Phoenix's blood. After receiving the Phoenix's inheritance perfectly, although Lin Feng had the body of a human, his aptitude and ability were no different from the Phoenix's. The Phoenix was a divine beast and was inextricably linked to the Demon Clan. One had to know that the reason why the Demon Clan's four great royal clans were peerless and ranked at the top of the Douling world was because their bloodline had the bloodline of the ancient ferocious beasts. The Phoenix also had part of the bloodline of the ancient divine beasts. To a certain extent, the Phoenix was actually a type of Demon Clan. Therefore, not only did Lin Feng not reject the energy of the Black Fog, but he was also touched by the opportunity, a great opportunity. Chapter 1551. Dong, dong, dong. That was the sound of vibrations. It was as if his heart was being hammered again and again, heavy and rhythmic. Lin Feng opened his eyes wide. At this moment, it was as if his body didn't belong to him. He couldn't move at all, but his senses were unusually sensitive. Even if he didn't look, he could clearly feel every inch of his skin and every meridian. It was as if there was a space in his mind that was scattered all over. This feeling was so special. The black fog entered his body, fused with his blood, and connected with his cells. However, it seemed to be invisible and disappeared in an instant. However, the warmth in his heart continued to increase, as if a stream of heat was flowing into his body. Lin Feng jumped up and down, his mind clear. At this moment of life and death, how could he not be clear-headed? However, the expected danger didn't appear. As time passed, the changes in his body became clearer and clearer. His whole body trembled slightly. If there was danger, there would be opportunity. If this strange black fog energy really wanted to destroy him, it would be as easy as blowing off dust. However, right now, it was just like a hot spring nourishing him. Although his body didn't improve at all, he could clearly feel the sublimation of the warmth in his heart. His soul was bathing in a warm pool, relaxing and natural, as if he had returned to the most primitive moment. His soul power continued to increase. The stronger his soul power, the clearer his control over his body. This feeling was because the soul was the core of the entire body. It controlled everything. For heavenly gods, the strength of the soul was the most direct and obvious increase in strength. It wasn't just an increase in spiritual power, it was also an increase in control of the source energy. Mastery was even better. Lin Feng completely understood at this moment. He was pleasantly surprised in his heart. What an unexpected opportunity. To be able to receive such treatment after breaking into this restriction was completely unexpected. Except, it seems that Mother is most likely not here. Lin Feng thought to himself. He didn't need to pay too much attention to accepting the soul baptism. The whole process happened naturally. Although he couldn't move now, he could vaguely sense the aura around him. There were no other martial artists in this space. What a pity. Lin Feng sighed softly. Although the encounter was good, it was far less important than finding the whereabouts of his mother. I wonder how long it will take. Lin Feng closed his eyes and frowned slightly. He wanted to break free from the restraints of this force and leave the seal. However, he seemed to be bound by an invisible rope, unable to move even half a step. No matter how good the opportunity was, it came at the wrong time, because he was afraid that he would lose a great opportunity soon. Hurry up, Lin Feng shouted. Unfortunately, it was useless to be anxious. The energy of the black fog kept pouring into him, nourishing his soul. It was slowly improving, but he did not know when it would come to an end. No matter how anxious he was powerless. The restriction's energy far exceeded his own strength. Time passed bit by bit. Sweat dripped from Lin Feng's forehead, and his body trembled slightly. He was not in pain, nor was he in danger. Instead, he was trying his best to break free from the bindings. However, his body was not listening to him at all. Lin Feng's face was slightly sinister, but he was already gritting his teeth to the extreme, and his strength was completely unleashed. However, nothing had changed. The energy of the black fog was too strong. What should we do? What should I do? Lin Feng was extremely anxious. The fifth restriction was already clear. The chances of breaking through the fourth and sixth restrictions were the highest. Right now, he was desperately trying to catch up with time, but he could only watch as the figure gradually faded away. He was powerless. Normally, he would not care about such a small amount of time. However, at this moment, his main body's consciousness transmitted. The news was extremely bad. The restriction of the demon underworld lock was about to be destroyed. I can't take it anymore. What a terrifying energy. Floating in midair, Lin Feng used all his strength, and his face was flushed red. The consumption of energy was already huge, and the demon underworld lock's control was gradually weakening. On the other hand, the great sage was like an awakened tiger. The simple iron cage could no longer contain him. Sizzle, sizzle. The golden light of the earth pillar in the great sage's hand became brighter and brighter, like the stars in the sky. What a powerful energy! Lin Feng was secretly shocked. From the demon underworld lock, he could feel a majestic and boundless energy rising slowly like the rising sun. It was too terrifying. It was as if a demon god had been awakened, and its power was unparalleled. In an instant, bang, a violent explosion sounded, as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting. The blue light was swallowed up in the blink of an eye, and the golden light shot out like an arrow into the sky. A terrifying force came, and Lin Feng let out a muffled groan. His entire body seemed to have been hit hard. His head shook violently, and his body retreated. Roar! A wild roar sounded, wantonly and arrogant. As he retreated, Lin Feng looked over. His face was pale. At this moment, the great sage was hovering in midair, holding the earth pillar in his hand. He looked like a peerless god of war. His body was covered in dense golden light, and he had completely merged with the earth pillar. There was no longer any barrier between them. The terrifying energy could be felt from far away. It was 10 times stronger than when he had fought with Lin Feng. It's a soul. Lin Feng was gloomy. Even Empyrean experts needed a soul. It was like a general on the battlefield. It could not be lacking. Although the great sage had been strong when he had fought with Lin Feng, it could not compare to the unity of man and nature now. Most importantly, the transformation of the heavenly treasure. It merged. Lin Feng's eyes brightened. At this moment, there was nothing but shock in his heart. The three heavenly treasures now had their own masters. Which King Zhong's sky arc was terrifyingly fast, and its power was boundless. The great sage's earth pillar transformed into a giant rod. Compared to its power, it was probably the strongest weapon in the Douling world. The great sage's strength was countless times stronger than before. He was the only exception. Although the shield of truth was a heavenly treasure, the increase in his strength was almost negligible. It was more of an auxiliary and defensive function. In terms of combat application, it was undoubtedly a level lower than the Sky Arc and Earth Pillar. Not necessarily, Lin Feng thought. They were all heavenly treasures. In terms of quality, the Shield of Truth was not inferior to the other two heavenly treasures. He was afraid that he could not unleash its full power. Moreover, his strength was not as strong as which King Jiang and the Great Sage. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lin Feng's heart suddenly trembled. He looked up and saw a pair of bright eyes staring at him from afar. They contained a strong desire to fight and kill, and were also full of provocation. That gaze seemed to be saying, "Come and stop me if you can." Ha ha! Wanton laughter echoed. The great sage roared at the sky, but it was unknown whether it was mockery or excitement. After the provocation, he did not even look at Lin Feng. In an instant, he rushed away like a gust of wind, heading straight for Demon Emperor Island. It's over. Lin Feng's chest rose and fell rapidly. His face was pale. Chapter 1552. Floating in the air, Lin Feng's face was ashen. Watching the golden figure disappear from his sight, he felt as if his heart had fallen into a bottomless abyss and was plunged into darkness. Borrowing the power of others, the great sage was indeed worthy of being called the most powerful elite of the demon race. Forcefully fusing with a heavenly treasure was something that no one else in the entire Douling world would dare to do, not even which Emperor Jiang. Once the fusion failed, the consequences would be severe. He would probably be devoured by the heavenly treasure. Amazing, Lin Feng murmured, his eyes sparkling. Although they were enemies, the great saint had something that he admired. Courage, courage. If it were him, he would never do such a risky thing. After all, he knew how powerful a heavenly treasure was. The starry sky level was far beyond the Douling world's level of power. The same went for its artifact spirit. It was definitely much stronger than an ordinary peak Saint King. On the other hand, I believe the great saint has some confidence, Lin Feng thought. Anyone who could become a demon commander was no ordinary person. The great saint was not a fool. Since he dared to try, he must be quite confident. The souls of the demon clan had never been strong. Even if the great saint was a special and outstanding member of the demon clan, his soul should not be as strong as Di Zhong's. The fifth seal. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. This thought suddenly appeared in his mind. His chest rose and fell slightly. The strength of the fifth seal was very likely the reason why the great saint had such a terrifying soul power. There was no time. The message sent by the clone made Lin Feng's face turn ghastly pale. The great saint was rushing over from not far away. The clone could not stop him at all. It was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. The difference in strength was too great. The clone might be faster than the great saint, but its long-range attacks could not hurt the great saint. The latter did not have to worry about the clone. Moreover, the clone had used the demon underworld lock continuously to fight against the great saint. The clone's strength was also at its lowest. If this dragged on, it would only be disadvantageous. The great saint could turn the tables and attack the clone. When that happened, he would be bitten by the fish. A heavenly treasure was not to be underestimated. There's not much time left. Lin Feng was well aware that the remaining time was like an hourglass, flowing down bit by bit. Every minute less was a minute more. Miracles had already happened before, and wanting to happen a second time was undoubtedly a fool's dream. The only way was to rely on oneself. There was still hope. His doppelganger had lured the great sage away from Demon Emperor Island. Now, even if the great sage wanted to rush back, he would still need to travel some distance. After all, a heavenly treasure that was compatible with one's body would not increase one's speed in any way. Sizzle, sizzle. Lin Feng carefully sensed his body. The black fog's energy was like layers of invisible lines that kept entering his body and into his soul. Warmth spread from his limbs, as if a huge meridian had formed a huge suction force, gathering power to the center. As his soul bathed in the warmth, his soul power unknowingly grew stronger. This was definitely a great opportunity. The strengthening of one's soul was something that could only be found through luck. There were countless ways to strengthen one's body in the Douling world, but the strengthening of one's soul was extremely rare. Furthermore, the strengthening of one's soul did not require any price to be paid, and yet it provided an extremely powerful amplification ability. It was simply a luxury. See hiss. His body was comfortably warm, and his heart was extremely anxious. However, at this moment, Lin Feng was somewhat absent-minded. Inexplicably, he entered a strange state for no reason. It was as if he was dreaming and waking up at the same time. It was as if he could see his own eyes and see the real him. The phoenix star seal on his forehead shone brightly like a burning flame. His eyes were bright like the stars in the sky. Vast star eyes. Vast star eyes. These were the top-notch eyes that had accompanied him all the way, and they had absolutely terrifying strength. Currently, his cultivation as a heavenly soul master was enough to look down on the entire Douling world. Roar! It was as if a phoenix was crying, and the huge phoenix behind him seemed to have come alive. It was the phoenix that had inherited his legacy. It was rather faded, and, at this moment, it was as if it had become one with him and could not be separated. Hua! His eyes shone brightly, and white light covered the sky and earth, instantly bringing him into a wonderful world. Boom! Boom! Rumble! Rumble! There were violent explosions. It was a barbaric area, but a shocking battle was taking place. It was a tall giant, mighty and majestic. It was an existence that seemed similar to Lin Feng. Its upper body was naked, and it was roaring and attacking crazily. Countless experts surrounded and attacked it, but the giant did not give in at all. It was not even at a disadvantage. Extremely powerful. It was as if they were standing face to face, and Lin Feng could clearly feel the existence of the giant. It was indomitable and fearless. It was as if it was the sky, and it was the entire world. Looking at this giant, Lin Feng was a little dazed and stunned. He looked at this battle that was 10 times, or even 100 times more powerful than the battle between the liches and demons. He was already shocked by the powerful experts. Suddenly, he was stunned when he saw the giant's eyes. They shone brightly, and his heartbeat quickened. Bang! 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 Lin Feng's body trembled slightly, and his heart felt as if it was about to jump out of his chest. It was as if he was connected to this giant by blood, and there was an inexplicable connection, especially the giant's eyes. They were so similar to Lin Feng's, so compatible. This giant. Lin Feng shuddered as he remembered. It was not the first time he had seen it. When a vast star pupil and vast star pupil first changed, when he had just entered the Suzaka continent, he had seen this giant. However, the scene at that time was completely different from now. The giant's appearance was not as clear as it was now. It was as if the battle was happening right in front of him. His eyes. Lin Feng softly muttered as he looked in front of him. He was stunned. Domineering eyes, terrifying power. Looking at the giant's eyes, Lin Feng's figure seemed to overlap with his own. His heart was moved, and his blood was boiling. A wave of warmth inexplicably increased, and he felt a different aura fill his body. It was the energy of the black fog, but it also did not seem to be. His breathing became heavier, and Lin Feng's body trembled slightly, and his expression changed rapidly. In his mind, it was as if a lock had been opened. His eyes shone brightly and changed. It was as if he had comprehended something. Everything became different. Shua, the powerful black fog energy instantly surged out and rushed into his mind. Boom! Lin Feng's tightly closed eyes abruptly opened with a resplendent light shining in them. At this moment, the phoenix star mark on his forehead seemed to have been extinguished, and the phoenix true body behind him also disappeared, and in its place was a giant that could support the heavens and the earth. Chapter 1553. It was as if he was looking into a mirror. Lin Feng looked at him in front of him and was shocked. The eyes were the windows to the soul. When a person's eyes changed, their aura and even appearance would change slightly, as if they had become another person. Thump, thump, thump. His heart was beating fast. Lin Feng looked at himself in front of him, but it did not look like him. The pair of bright eyes were the same as the giant's, and the giant's figure behind him seemed to overlap. Mutation. Before entering the fifth layer of restrictions, Lin Feng had never thought that there would be such a change. It was far beyond his expectations. As his soul was strengthened and nourished, it transformed bit by bit. In the depths of his soul, it was as if an imprint was slowly being uncovered, like the awakening of his bloodline and the awakening of his memories. Lin Feng's eyes were wide open. At this moment, he had become one with the giant, and the shock it brought to him was immense. Pangu. This was the ancestor of all humans in the Douling world. There was no ideology, but the thoughts in his heart told him the identity of this giant. This was a powerful existence that was connected to his bloodline. He was the ancestor of the sorcerer tribe, the ancient tribe, and the human tribe. The countless experts that surrounded him like locusts in the illusion were the ancestors of the demon tribe. 3,000 demon gods. Thump, thump, thump. Lin Feng's head seemed to be hit by a war drum. His eyes were wide open. Intense energy poured into his mind. He seemed to be able to see the existence of the Vastar eyes and the Vastar eyes. They were like two little fairies playing around, like the devouring fire and the rebirth fire intertwining. Even though they were at different levels of power, they were getting along very well. There was no need for them to do anything. They had already merged perfectly. This was the true I, the true power, where the soul was formed. Hua! Light shone brightly. Lin Feng's eyes changed instantly. It was the sunlight that was filled with the power of the stars. It was the starlight that broke the dawn. It was the rising sun that gave people strength and vitality. The darkness in front of him slowly dispersed like dark clouds as the light in his eyes lit up. Even Lin Feng's heart became extremely calm at this moment. Pa! 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 The illusion was instantly broken, as if it had met its nemesis. Countless streams of information surged into his mind in a frenzy like a flood breaking through a dam. Every single word and scene was clearly imprinted into his mind. Those were the remaining memories of Pangu, the legends about the origin of the human race, and the top-secret history of the entire Do spirit world. This, Lin Feng took a deep breath. He was deeply shocked. There was an unbelievable amount of information, a horrifying top secret, and the information in his mind was enough to shake the entire Douling world. Liches are indeed mortal enemies. No, it should be said that humans and demons are mortal enemies. No wonder the heavenly treasure descended. It turns out that there is such a great secret hidden within. Lin Feng murmured with a solemn expression. The legend was true. The battle between Pangu and the 3,000 demonic gods was unprecedented and was talked about enthusiastically. The three major human tribes were indeed formed after Pangu's death. Pangu's physical body turned into the 12 ancestors of sorcery, and countless members of the sorcerer tribe. The existence of his soul turned into the ancients, and the essence and blood of his entire body turned into humans. Essence and blood, soul. Lin Feng murmured and understood something. The heavenly ark, the earthly pillar, and the human shield. These three heavenly treasures were actually formed by gathering part of the 12 ancestors of sorcery's power. Although they could not represent Pangu's truly powerful physical body, they still contained part of his physical strength. He had both the ancients' and humans' bloodlines. Coupled with the shield of truth, he was able to activate Pangu's bloodline. All three were indispensable. My soul was originally not strong enough. It was like an army's general was not strong enough and did not have enough prestige to lead the entire army. But now, with the activation of the fifth restriction, my soul has truly reached the starry sky level. I can control the ancient's bloodline and even truly control the shield of truth. This became the axis to activate Pangu's bloodline. Everything is predestined, Yi Zichen said. After thinking about it for a long time, Lin Feng was completely enlightened. This endless influx of information was like a bright light in front of his eyes, and all the secrets could be unraveled. Even the history of the Douling world was clear. In ancient times, the Douling world was still in chaos. It led to an earth-shaking war in the Starry Sky world. The war between the Starry Sky powerhouses. The human powerhouse Pangu fought against the 3,000 demon gods. This war was earth-shattering. The Douling world became the main battlefield and fundamentally changed the Douling world. Both sides perished together. The 3,000 demon gods entered the sea and became the 3,000 demon clans with countless branches. Pangu turned into the three major human clans. Pangu and the 3,000 fiend gods were incredibly powerful. Their power system could cause the stars to change. A slight move in one part could affect the whole body. Not only did their deaths bring about the birth of the human race and the demon race, but it also changed the chaotic Douling world from its very foundation. The 8,000 uncivilized neutral races were enlightened and transformed. After the war, the Douling world went through a long period of settling down. Only then did it slowly form a civilization. The strongest were undoubtedly the witches led by the 12 ancestral witches and the demon powerhouses formed by the 3,000 demon gods. The hatred between them had been accumulating since ancient times. After many provocations and riots, it finally exploded and officially started the first war between the witches and demons. The result of that war was equally earth-shattering. Almost 99% of the powerful forces and resources accumulated by both sides were destroyed in this war. In the end, the situation did not change. The witches and demons called it mutual destruction. It was because the witches and demons that ruled the Douling world weakened rapidly that the 8,000 neutral races rose up and became the heavenly spirits of today. Lin Feng thought to himself. The history in his memories was clearly much more accurate than what he knew. The authenticity was very high. The heavenly spirits were not originally strong. They only slowly emerged after the first war between the witches and demons. After a long period of accumulation, as the witches and demons fought again and again, the heavenly spirits that were more powerful than the witches and demons were born. The witches and demons tried their best to tear their opponents apart. However, they suddenly realized that there was another force that could not be ignored in the Douling world other than them. Therefore, the second war between the witches and demons ended abruptly. It was not like what Shun told him. The demons retreated in defeat, and the witches did not really win. It was just that the demons did not want to continue fighting, and the witches did not want to be taken advantage of by others. Therefore, they preserved some of their strength and ended the war tacitly. The transmission of energy will decrease with each level. After Pangu died, the 12 ancestral witches were undoubtedly the strongest. However, after the first war between the witches and demons, the 12 ancestral witches died. After that, the witch kings became weaker with each generation. The only one whose strength is comparable to the ancestral witches is Dijiang. It is the same for the demons. The difference is that the 3,000 demon gods of the demon race threw themselves into the ocean. Other than multiplying their bloodline, they preserved the last bit of their essence blood. This secret is rarely known by anyone. Only the true descendants of the demon race know of this secret, and it is passed down from generation to generation. Demon gods of destruction. Lin Feng's eyes brightened. His chest rose and fell rapidly. The identity of this demon gods of destruction was obvious. It was most likely the terrifying existence that he saw in the forbidden land of the demons. No wonder he was so powerful. He had part of the 3,000 demon gods of the demons. How could he not be powerful? He was probably more terrifying than the 3,000 demon gods of the past. In terms of intelligence, the demons may not be as smart as the three major human clans. However, in terms of loyalty and belief in power, the demons are extremely thorough. Generation after generation, they have contributed silently to nourish the powerful demon gods of destruction. Until now, Lin Feng was secretly amazed. From what he saw in the cemetery, the demon gods of destruction had begun to show their prowess. If they were to be awakened, the Douling world would probably be truly destroyed, as its name suggested. That terrifying power was far more powerful than his and Witch King Dijiang's. It was the true Starry Sky level. In the Douling world, there was no power that could stop the terror of the demon gods of destruction. The only way to fight against the demon gods of destruction is to use the three heavenly treasures. Lin Feng's eyes glowed. His state of mind was completely different. The significance of the war of the witches and demons was no longer the most important. So what if the witches won? So what if the southern region that he was in benefited from it and became the final winner? If the humans wanted to continue to survive, they had to defeat the demon gods of destruction. Other than Pangu's power, he could not think of anything else that could kill the demon gods of destruction. If he could gather the essence of the 12 witches and combine the three heavenly treasures, he should be able to fight against the demon gods of destruction. Phew! Lin Feng let out a long sigh. It felt like a lifetime had passed. The complicated information in his mind was in a mess, and the shock it brought to him was too great. He felt that before the first wave had subsided, another wave had risen. There was an additional layer of pressure on his shoulders, pressing on his shoulders and chest, making it hard for him to breathe. However, the gains are still quite substantial. Lin Feng's eyes glowed. His aura increased by another layer. He vaguely had the aura of an emperor like Pangu. At this moment, the restraint of the fifth layer of restriction had disappeared. In fact, it was useless even if it was still there. Because with the power of his soul, the fifth layer of restriction could no longer restrain him. His eyes had gone through a perfect transformation and were reborn from the cocoon. There was no need to deliberately fuse them. There was no longer a state of self. Because his eyes had truly become a part of his body, where his soul resided. Lin Feng nodded and smiled faintly. Although he did not know what his eyes were called, since they were so similar to Pangu's eyes, he would call them Pangu's eyes. Chapter 1554. A top-level eye? It's not an exaggeration to call it a super eye, Lin Feng said softly, in a good mood. No matter how strong the Vastar pupil and Vastar pupil were, even if they reached the Starry Sky level, it was only in terms of strength. But now, the Pangu Eye was not only a complete entity, it was perfectly compatible with the body and became the center of the whole soul, controlling the whole body. It had also reached the Starry Sky level in essence. It was a completely different feeling. Just like the power of a fist, the same destructive force of 10,000 Jin, one needed the right time, the right place, the right people, the right combination of strength, skills, gloves, and so on to barely achieve it. The other, just by standing quietly and throwing a punch, had the same strength, or even stronger. The difference was more than just a little bit. Not only did it completely inherit the original abilities of the vast star pupil and vast star pupil, but it also strengthened the foundation by another level. Similarly, the soul power has also undergone a qualitative change, as if it has merged with the world. It's so familiar. Lin Feng's heart trembled. At this moment, the perception of the surroundings was completely different. The changes in the soul power seemed to have an additional layer of the power of the world. The power of the starry sky level was really terrifying. And this was only a part of it. The true power of the Pangu I was far from being displayed. It can see through all illusions. The control of the body, the control of the shield of truth, and so on. Too much. The Pangu eye was not only an auxiliary eye, it was also very strong in the battle mode, unpredictable and had many applications. It was just that he had just transformed. To truly display its power, he still needed to explore and comprehend, and a long period of cultivation. But even if he could only display a part of its power now, it was more than 10 times stronger than the original eye. Ha! Clenching his fists, Lin Feng was filled with confidence, and he was more confident now. Now, the original body was no longer inferior to the doppelganger. Just the existence of the Pangu eye alone was enough to suppress the doppelganger. Demon Emperor Island, the 5th layer. Ha! A bright light flashed, and Lin Feng slowly walked out from the black fog with a calm expression. He came out of the restriction unscathed. Not only was he unscathed, but there was a different kind of light in his eyes. His aura was oppressive. It was as if he had gone through a long period of seclusion, and his strength had improved fundamentally. "There's no obstruction," Lin Feng murmured. Perhaps it was rather troublesome to enter, but the restriction on the 5th level was only a place of gifts. After entering it and experiencing the amplification of the soul, the restrictions would vanish, and one could easily leave. Just as he had expected, his mother was not among them. The 5th floor was clear at a glance. Even if Mother had entered the 5th layer of the restriction, she had already left after the transformation of her soul energy, Lin Feng said softly. The question in his heart had already been answered. Without any hesitation, his eyes changed slightly as he felt an extremely powerful force slowly approaching from afar. Not only did his state of mind not panic, it became calm and focused, with thousands of thoughts running through his mind. This was not only because of the increase in his strength, but also because the path he had walked had never been smooth. Up until now, he had already faced countless dangers. There's not much time left. There should be one more chance. Lin Feng's eyes were cold. He had already finished exploring the 5th layer of the restriction, and the most likely ones were the 4th and 6th layers of the restriction. With his mother's strength, the possibility of her being in the 4th layer of the restriction was undoubtedly higher. That was what he thought before, but after experiencing the 5th layer of the restriction, his thoughts were different now. The 4th layer of the restriction, the demon clan experts who enter it will be protected by the ancestors, and their potential will be stimulated. Lin Feng thought to himself. He had learned the details of the 4th layer of the restriction from the Demon Fox clan expert. Previously, he was not so clear about the stimulated potential, but now it was clear. Obviously, the 4th layer of the restriction had the same effect as the 5th layer of the restriction. It should enhance the strength of the Demon Clan experts other than the soul. If so, what was the use of his mother entering it? The 6th layer, Lin Feng nodded secretly. Since the 4th layer was ruled out, the possibility of the 6th layer of the restriction was undoubtedly the highest. Of course, the 3rd and 7th layers were also possible, but the probability of the two added together was less than half of the 6th layer of the restriction. Now, that time was limited. He naturally could not explore them one by one, but he had to take a gamble. It's decided. Lin Feng's eyes were bright, and he had already made up his mind. Like an arrow leaving the bow, he shot out without hesitation. There was no turning back, and he had no way out. If he wanted to save his mother, he had to take a gamble one last time. It was also the biggest chance. Boom, boom. Golden light shone. Holding the heavenly treasure earth pillar in his hand, the great sage was in a frenzy, and his eyes were full of killing intent and ferocity. Originally, He did not have much hatred for Lin Feng, and even a little bit of appreciation, but anyone who was teased again and again would be furious. Not to mention Lin Feng's actions were simply riding on his neck. That was humiliation. Running away from a battle was already something he despised, not to mention Lin Feng running amok on Demon Emperor Island. How could he tolerate this? How could he tolerate this? Roar! The great sage roared furiously, his killing intent boiling. His soul's power had all returned, and the perfect fusion with the earth pillar made the great sage even more confident, and his strength was extraordinary. He was confident that as long as he caught him, the human would not be able to escape even if he had the ability to turn the world upside down. This time, he would not forgive that human. He wanted Lin Feng to be the first lonely soul to be killed by the earth pillar after it perfectly fused with the earth pillar. Die! The great sage was like a golden ray of light, and wherever he passed, even the space trembled. In those murderous eyes, there was a flash of gray light. No one, not even the great sage himself, knew what it was. Whoosh! Lin Feng's figure slowly appeared. In front of him was a familiar cylindrical object, emitting a milky white light. Lin Feng stood still, his eyes flashing slightly, and stepped in without hesitation. He knew very well that if he wanted to enter the 6th level, he had to pass through the staircase. The first time, he had entered it like this, but he had been suppressed by the enormous power like Mount Tai, and had fallen to the 4th level. What happened this time? Bang! A terrifying pressure appeared in an instant. A heaven-like pressure came from above, and an extremely strong energy instantly erupted into a boundless attack, without any blind spots. But this time, Lin Feng's expression did not even change. The Pangu eye flashed slightly, and the power it emitted directly resisted the pressure. Like lightning, sparks flew everywhere. Pa! Pa! The collision of energy was clearly visible to his eyes. As expected, I've improved a lot, Lin Feng said softly. Although he had mentally prepared himself, and had predicted the strength of the Pangu eye, when he actually entered and used it for the first time, he realized that he had underestimated its power. At the moment, Ji hadn't cared about this tremendous pressure at all. The Pangu eye automatically protected him like a real shield. So powerful. Whoosh! Lin Feng exerted force with his feet, and his body shot out quickly. The power coming from above grew stronger and stronger, but the power of the Pangu eye also grew stronger. Lin Feng was deeply shocked, but he did not even use the star origin energy, completely testing the power of the Pangu eye. Who would have thought that the Pangu eye really had such a terrifying power? In the blink of an eye, pa! Lin Feng passed through a wall, and his body slightly stabilized. The enormous pressure instantly disappeared, and everything around him became clear. Lin Feng took a deep breath, revealed a faint smile, and stepped out. It was too easy. Demon Emperor Island, 6th level. It's finally here. Lin Feng's eyes shone slightly. Whoosh! A red and green light flashed between his eyebrows, and Wing instantly appeared. Without any communication, Wing knew what to do. Enormous branches and leaves intertwined like flowers scattered by a celestial maiden, covering the entire area. A black mass of winged insects quickly flew out in all directions. Find the location of the restriction. Whoosh! Lin Feng moved, and in an instant he also rushed out. He was not looking for the restriction, but was rushing towards the center. The entire Demon Emperor Island was conical, and the stairs were cylindrical, forming a straight line. Therefore, he was very clear about his approximate location and could completely calculate it. It was not easy to find the location of a small restriction in this enormous area. Even with Wing's searching ability, he still spent a lot of time on the 5th level of Demon Emperor Island. Although the 6th level was much smaller than the 5th level, he did not have much time left. One more minute was one more minute. He did not know where the restriction was, but as long as he stood at the center of the 6th level, Then when he found the restriction, he would be able to rush over as fast as possible. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lin Feng's body was like an illusion, and his expression was solemn. Even so, he was not confident that he could enter the restriction before the great sage arrived. After all, it still required a bit of luck. Was his luck good? Wait! While rushing, Lin Feng's eyes suddenly brightened. Due to inertia, he was still making judgments based on his previous thoughts, looking for the fastest way. However, he had forgotten something, or should he say, change. Previously, my aura could not detect here, because I was not strong enough. But now, the power of Pangu's eye has actually surpassed the power level of Douling World, and reached the level of the starry sky. Perhaps it is possible to detect in this independent area. Let's give it a try. Thinking of this, Lin Feng's eyes suddenly lit up. The aura of Pangu's eye spread out instantly, and Lin Feng instantly revealed a surprised expression. It could detect. He did not guess wrongly. Anything that seemed impossible might be, because he was not strong enough. Everything in front of him once again proved this theory. Lin Feng instantly stopped, closed his eyes, and focused on detecting. His expression was solemn. The speed was quite fast. The speed of detecting aura was thousands of times faster than a winged insect. The 6th level of Demon Emperor Island was not big. The smaller the area, the denser the spiritual energy. Almost in the blink of an eye, I've got it. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly opened, and radiance shot out. Chapter 1555. It was a race against time. Whoosh! Lin Feng's speed was pushed to the limit. Although his body was not as strong as his clone, his speed was not considered slow. After all, he had inherited the blood of the divine beast phoenix. Lin Feng was even faster than a divine beast. Even if he could not reach the limit of his speed, it would not take much effort to travel on the small 6th level of Demon Emperor Island. Moreover, Lin Feng was quite lucky this time. Finally, there's a silver lining. As he sped, Lin Feng's eyes shone. He was in a good mood. Although danger was coming, he estimated that the great sage would need at least half an hour to reach Demon Emperor Island. He would need at most 30 seconds to reach his destination. The location of the restriction. This time, the area where the restriction was located was not too far away from where he was. Since he entered the forbidden land of the demon clan, he did not have much luck. He was discovered by the great sage as soon as he entered and fought with him. In the end, he had no choice but to retreat strategically. He entered the cemetery inexplicably, thinking that his mother was trapped there. He did not expect to encounter the world-destroying demon god. His shield of truth was damaged, and he almost lost his life. He entered Demon Emperor Island to explore the 5th level of the restriction, which had the highest possibility, but returned in disappointment. Again and again. Again and again. It said that there are gains and losses. The more you lose, the more you gain. Lin Feng thought, obtaining Pangu's secret and possessing Pangu's pupil is my chance. I hope my mother is really inside the restriction this time. Otherwise, the next time I want to enter Demon Emperor Island, I'm afraid it will be harder than ascending to the heavens. Lin Feng's expression was solemn. He understood. Once the demon clan was prepared, Demon Emperor Island, as a forbidden land of the demon clan, would definitely be heavily guarded. If he wanted to enter again, he would probably be ambushed and beheaded. This was the best chance. I must succeed. Lin Feng clenched his fists. His veins bulged. The thought in his heart was extremely firm. Soon, thud, Lin Feng fell from the sky. His eyes shone brightly as he looked ahead. There was a huge and majestic palace located in a valley. The golden light was dazzling and extremely luxurious. What was different from the 5th layer was that the restriction here was only a faint layer of light film. It did not seem to have any offensive power and was just like an ornament. But was that really the case? Swoosh! Lin Feng's eyes lit up as his heart was moved. A bright light shone out of Pangu's eyes. Everything in the light film was reflected in Pangu's eyes, without any reservation. So that's how it is. Lin Feng nodded, understanding in his heart. The light film he saw was not a true restriction, but a layer of cover. The real restriction was outside the light membrane. It was completely transparent, and no trace of color could be seen. It was completely in a state of nothingness. It was quite bizarre. It's the refraction of light and the transfer of energy. Lin Feng thought to himself. Originally, it was impossible for the restriction to be in such a state of nothingness. The only possibility was that the principle of light combined with the changes in the restriction made the innermost layer of light film a camouflage. If it were any other cultivator, they would definitely be fooled. They would enter in a daze, only to realize that they were fooled instantly. Even the previous him might have done the same. But now, it was completely different. In front of Pangu's eyes, all illusions and tricks could not be hidden. There should be a correct path. Lin Feng's eyes shone brightly as he scanned the surroundings. He understood in his heart. The complexity of the restriction was far beyond his imagination. After all, he did not know much about it. Being able to pass through the restriction on the 5th layer smoothly was largely due to luck. However, it was impossible to rely on luck to break through the restriction every time. Moreover, the difficulty of the restriction on the 6th layer was definitely higher than that of the 5th layer. There is still time. I can't be anxious. Lin Feng thought to himself. The more anxious he was, the more chaotic it would be. Once he entered the restriction, it would not be so easy to come out again. But now he still had room for change. Whoosh, with clear eyes, Lin Feng walked in circles. The valley was not big. A circle of light film was just a small area for him. Pangu's eyes shone brightly. Nothing could escape from its prying eyes. In just a few dozen seconds, Lin Feng had already steadily walked around the entire circle. The information he obtained was also quite good. 3 points. There are 3 points that are quite suspicious. But I don't know which point is the real life gate. Or perhaps all of them are. The thought flashed through his mind, but Lin Feng immediately rejected it. The difficulty of the restriction on the 6th layer was definitely higher than that of the 5th layer. In other words, its complexity was completely imaginable. Restrictions and formations were the same. How could a perfect formation have 3 life gates? It was the same for restrictions. Therefore, only one of the 3 suspicious points was the real life gate. As for the other 2, one of them is probably the death gate, and the other one might be the button shaft. Lin Feng thought lightly and did not dare to be sure. Just like the formation of the ancient Phoenix clan in the southern ancient region, it was very likely that there was another world in the formation. It could be a formation within a formation or a second layer of a formation. Then this point was called the button shaft. Generally, it was very special for a formation to have one button shaft. The possibility of having 2 button shafts was very low. The probability was only 1/3. Life gate, death gate, button shaft. Lin Feng pursed his lips. Although the probability of finding the life gate was only 1/3, at least he had a 2/3 chance of surviving. Even if I enter the death gate, it might not necessarily be a hopeless situation. This formation is mostly an illusion formation. After entering the death gate, there is an 80 to 90% chance that there will be endless illusions. The martial artist will exhaust his strength and eventually die in the death gate. But I have nothing to fear. Lin Feng's eyes flashed with confidence. If it was before, he might be in danger. However, with the Pangu eyes, he could see through all illusions. He could be said to be completely immune to illusions. Even if he entered the death gate, he was confident that he could survive. The so-called death gate, the so-called certain death, was actually just a saying. It wasn't real death. Strength was the final key to determining life and death. When a martial artist's strength was boundless, he could even directly destroy the formation with brute force. What was the use of the death gate? Just choose one. Lin Feng nodded. It was already very difficult to find 3 light spots. Only the existence of the Pangu eyes could help him. If he wanted to find the difference in which light spot was the life gate and which was the passage, it would be extremely difficult. After all, he didn't even know the principle of the formation in front of him. Since that was the case, he might as well guess. He trusted his intuition. Chi. Like a sword, Lin Feng penetrated the formation and entered. He chose the closest light spot and entered without hesitation. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. The moment he entered, he felt an extremely strong magnetic force. Dazzling lights flowed in his eyes. They were constantly twisting in the surroundings like dragons. It was bizarre and variegated. This was the sixth layer of the formation. Swoosh! The Pangu eyes flickered. Instantly, the colors in the surroundings changed from colorful to black and white. The violent changes also stopped in an instant. Looking ahead, Lin Feng's expression was calm and composed. Suddenly, a surprised smile appeared on his face. These illusions weren't real illusions. They were like a layer of colors smeared in front of the eyes to confuse the eyes. In other words, the light spot he entered was definitely not the Death Gate. As expected, my luck won't be this bad every time. Lin Feng smiled. Seeing through all illusions, the Pangu eyes saved him a lot of effort. The blurred colors in front of him turned into black and white. The illusions disappeared and were replaced by a narrow path. It was very narrow, just enough for him to walk on. It was shaped like a spoon. A button. No, I think this is the life gate. Lin Feng smiled faintly and slowly stepped out. His intuition told him that this narrow path covered by the blurred colors was the life gate of the sixth layer of the formation. His luck was very good. He continued forward without any obstructions. In less than 10 seconds, Lin Feng reached the end of the winding path. It was as if he was passing from one cave to another. There was a flash of light in front of him. Lin Feng clenched his fists, and his star source energy slowly gathered. His energy condensed as he passed through. Whoosh! The bright colors made him feel like he was in a different world. Dense spiritual energy rushed towards him. The spiritual energy here was much denser than the outside world. However, this wasn't anything surprising. What really caught his attention was a huge palace shining with golden light. It was boundlessly majestic. It was extremely luxurious. The majestic atmosphere of the palace shook one's soul. It's very familiar. Lin Feng frowned slightly. The palace gave him a familiar feeling. It was a familiar aura. Bang! His head shook. Lin Feng's heartbeat sped up. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. This aura, this familiar feeling, didn't it come from the commander of the demon race? The great sage. Looking at the huge and glorious palace, Lin Feng was speechless. He had spent a lot of effort to reach the great sage's residence. This was ridiculous. I thought my luck was really good. In the end, it was all for naught. Lin Feng sighed deeply and pursed his lips. He had done his best, but the result was still the same. What could he do? This was the will of the heavens. No matter how luxurious this palace was, and how many secrets it had, his mother would definitely not be inside. Because with the great sage's status, he would definitely not lie to him. If his mother was really in the palace, there was no reason for the great sage to not know. Moreover, the most important thing was that his Pangu eyes had already probed the palace in a short period of time. There was no sign of life in the palace. However, he could imagine how other experts of the demon race could step into the palace of the commander of the demon race. Moreover, this was the sixth layer of the Demon Emperor Island. How many experts of the demon race had the strength to enter this place? The number of experts of the demon race could probably be counted on one hand. Huff! Lin Feng sighed deeply and shook his head helplessly. After fighting for so long and putting in so much effort, the result was still disappointing. He clenched his fists and his body trembled. He had failed. I'm going crazy again. Continue to update. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.